I don't really think that I need to say this, but I did grow up with Dragon Ball Z, GT, and have been enjoying Super, but through the many retellings of the Dragon Ball storyline, there have been very few that make a real attempt at taking that aspect seriously. Games like the Legacy of Goku series and even the Xenoverse games come to mind for this as being some of the few that really try to make the most out of the DBZ story, in my opinion at least. However, I think it's safe to say that Kakarot is the game that a lot of us have been wanting for so long. Well, scratch that, because I'm going to be speaking for myself regarding this. I have been winning or wanting a game just like this for a very, very long time. And truly be able to relive those moments from my childhood and remember what made these series so special to me to begin with. And if you ask me, Kakarot is the best Dragon Ball game thus far. I think they did so many things right, but they missed the mark in some important places here, and I would like to go ahead and bring attention to everything that they've done right and the things that could have been improved. So bear with me, this is going to be a long one. So welcome to my essay, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the real problem with this game. Let's begin. So just as a very quick disclaimer here, there are going to be very heavy spoilers in this video, so only watch if either you don't care to be spoiled, already played the game, or just want to know what happens without watching a playthrough. Also feel free to watch if you've already watched the series, since I'll pretty much be narrating everything that happens there from the perspective of the game that is. So there are going to be some discrepancies between the two. Now let's go ahead and dive right on. I also just kind of wanted to point out that I recorded this entire gameplay while playing the PC version of this game while using this fantastic controller from HEXGAMING for me to review on my main channel, Tech Summit. So if you're interested in learning about a great controller for PC gaming, then do keep an eye out as I will have my full review very soon after posting this video. However, I wanted to know that if some of my gameplay looks a little bit janky, then that's because I used OBS game capture to capture my footage, and I'm pretty sure I messed up on the settings somewhere, but I'll try my best to provide decent gameplay footage at least. The game starts off from the very beginning with the Saiyan Saga of Dragon Ball Z. You begin by fighting Piccolo in an image battle, and as to show you the basics of combat, so this is essentially going to be the tutorial section, but I would argue that most of the Saiyan Saga will be treated this way. Now, this game is very story heavy, so much so that you're literally carried through it. However, I didn't mind it too much, because every time that I advance to an important part of the story, we come across some of the best animated sequences I have ever seen from an anime game. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's go through the story saga by saga, because I believe that each one should be critiqued individually. But trust me, I'll also be talking about the current DLC package and the upcoming story arc from the DLC package as well. Now finally, let's actually get right into the Saiyan Saga. And let's begin with the Saiyan Saga. The very beginning is very wholesome since you do get to play as Goku chasing little Gohan around and hunting for some food. It feels like it's going to be a steady road to follow from here, as once you get your hands on Gohan, you fly out to the Kame house to meet up with Roshi, Bulma, and Krillin. And when introducing Gohan to your friends that Goku has not seen in years at this point, they're all shocked and delighted to meet him. And shortly after, a space pod lands on Earth with a spiky-haired individual coming out of it and bullying a farmer who probably survived this near-death experience from having a rifle bullet shot right back at him. And El Piccolo, Goku's greatest rival at this point, senses that there is a great energy approaching, and that's when he comes across that same individual whose name is Raditz. After Piccolo and Raditz engage in quick combat, Raditz raves about how much stronger he is and, well, just leaves. And then the monster's power level approaches, yet again, and it has its eyes set on Goku. Raditz realizes that Goku has no idea of his true identity once he does arrive or who he really is, nor does he recognize Raditz at all. That's when Raditz reveals that he traveled across space in order to recruit Kakarot, Goku's true Saiyan name, alongside some of the few survivors from their home planet, Planet Vegeta. But he also reveals that he is Goku's older brother. I know, shocker, and such a plot twist over here. In order to protect Gohan and the others, Goku tries to take on Raditz on his own and fails miserably. He kidnaps Gohan and uses him as a bargaining chip to convince Goku to go along with him or his son will die. Things are moving very quickly, as even Piccolo shows up, mentioning that he had an encounter with Raditz beforehand. Neither of them are confident that they can beat him separately, so they decide to form a temporary truce. This was an important moment because it isn't mentioned much, but before the events of Dragon Ball Z, Goku had defeated Piccolo during the World Martial Arts Tournament years ago, and they've known each other as the two most powerful beings on Earth, with some deep-rooted hatred between the two, though Piccolo definitely has a lot more animosity for Goku than vice versa. But they're being invaded by someone much, much more powerful. And like I said, at this point, it does feel like they're rushing a little bit through the story, because even though this game is for fans of the anime, they should have added some more context to their relationship to each other and what that means regarding their unexpected truce here. I can somewhat look past that, since their relationship to one another is still implied, but it comes across more like a rivalry, which isn't really incorrect either, but they could have fleshed out that aspect a little bit better, I would say. So when they rush over to rescue Gohan, they find him trapped inside of Raditz's ship, which he used in order to come to Earth. Both Goku and Piccolo prepare themselves for battle, and while the fight itself is actually pretty exciting, since Raditz just has such an interesting set of abilities at his disposal to look out for. Once you've gotten him a certain amount of health, the battle will stop, and in a fit of rage, Gohan erupts from Raditz's ship and headbutts him right in the stomach. Goku and Piccolo can't help but to notice that Gohan's brief increase in strength on its own was enough to surpass both of theirs and to deal a strong hit on Raditz all by himself. However, Gohan is virtually unconscious right after this, and Piccolo and Goku have been heavily wounded. So the only way to stop Raditz is by restraining him somehow and firing Piccolo's instant kill move, the Special Beam Cannon. This goes exactly as I described, and as a result of this attack, Goku dies alongside Raditz. Before Raditz fully goes away, Piccolo makes the foolish decision here of telling Raditz about the Dragon Balls and that they can be used in order to grant any wish, even bring people back to life, and that includes Goku. Raditz records this conversation and transmits it to his allies. He then warns the Earthlings of his Saiyan companions that will arrive within a year's time in order to avenge him and collect the Dragon Balls for themselves while they're at it. With Goku dead, there are two things that need to be done now. First off, they need to gather every fighter on Earth in order to train for the next year and be able to fight back against the Saiyan threat. However, their intentions are also to bring Goku back using the Dragon Balls, which can grant the user any wish they desire after collecting them. And you can summon Shenron as a result, and that's going to be the wish-granting dragon here, and he can only grant one wish at a time. And once you end up using the Dragon Balls once, they're going to disappear for an entire year and be completely unusable, and then you're going to have to go ahead and recollect them again and rinse and repeat every time that happens. That's essentially how the lore behind it works. And at this point, we switch perspectives over to Gohan, and I did really enjoy this part, honestly. You're taught how to hunt while listening to Gohan complain about his circumstances, with his dad being dead and being kidnapped by Piccolo to train. You know, the scary boogeyman. I did find this section to be a little bit short for my liking, because Goku also gets to do some training in the other world, and it's pretty intensive training as well. When Goku reaches the other world, he is told of a man by the name of King Kai who can train him, but he has to get through Snake Way in order to get there. Anyone that watched the anime or the original cut of Dragon Ball Z, and even Kai, knows that this took a few episodes in order to complete, with some detours along the way, especially with the original cut. However, we skip right into him arriving at King Kai's planet, which was just weird. This was a missed opportunity, as we could have had some training against the Hell Demons or something like that. And then once we reach King Kai, Goku has to tell him a joke before he will accept to train him. And then afterwards, you just don't really do any kind of training on your own. But going back to Gohan, you will find that he's grown stronger and can now fight as he continues to train with Piccolo before the Saiyans arrive. However, they end up arriving a month early, before the Z Fighters are fully prepared, But they all just bravely march to the battlefield as is. And when the Saiyans arrive, Nappa and Vegeta, they begin to wreak havoc on civilians just for the hell of it, before heading over to the battlefield. And once they finally met up, we engage in a team battle against the Cybermen. These are green little creatures that are said to be just as strong, or about as strong at least, as Raditz himself. And this fight is pretty cool, though not necessarily very challenging per se. Though I would argue that that's exactly the point, since the Z Fighters have grown much stronger than they were just about 11 months ago in this timeline. And we then start to see each Z Fighter die, starting with Yamcha, then Chiaotzu, and finally Tien. And this was due to a Cyberman exploding on Yamcha, and Chiaotzu unfortunately self-destructing on Nappa and it not doing anything. And then we have Tien, who sacrifices his life trying to avenge Chiaotzu here. Now there are going to be 3 fighters left, and just Nappa alone can take on all 3 of them at the same time. Shortly after, Piccolo is taken down trying to protect Gohan, who was still too scared in order to fight on his own and does not believe in his own abilities. And before dying, Piccolo expresses that Gohan was his only friend, which is still a sad moment. And dear God, this animation is absolutely beautiful when he starts dying out. However, he is completely distraught from watching his mentor, the man he learned so much from and took care of him during Goku's absence, die on the scene, and as a result losing the Dragon Balls as well. However, it's not too late, because by this point, Goku had already been brought back to life and back to Earth, so he rushed over to where the last fighters are in order to help out in the battle. After Goku arrives, he's met by everyone's corpse, with only Krillin and Gohan standing here, which are the 2 smallest ones in the group. And in anger, the battle begins against Nappa, and this is actually a pretty cool boss fight, which does make Nappa feel like a threat considering all of the dodging that you have to do in order to get through this boss fight. Ultimately, I had a ton of fun here. I felt that it was a great experience. Finally get to beat the living hell out of Nappa after watching him disseminate so many of our friends, to then move on to a real boss fight. Goku versus Vegeta. By this point, we are met with a beautiful flurry of animation, of animated cutscenes, and some cool moments within the fight itself. This fight was actually a little bit tough, especially if you use the Kaioken during this fight. You probably really shouldn't do that, since it'll drain your HP considerably, and yeah, it essentially just does it a little bit too quickly, and the payoff might not be worth it considering that this isn't exactly the easiest boss fight. But after this fight, we are met with the legendary Kamehameha versus Galagon Clash, and it ends just as we remember. Then we have to fight Great Ape Vegeta, and this part is also really fun, though easier than the first fight, that is for sure. There are some more fights going on against Vegeta, and it all is a great trip up to this point. For example, Krillin and Gohan come back to assist Goku, and find that he cannot move anymore, at all. So Krillin tries to take the spirit bomb that he was preparing from Goku to launch it directly at Vegeta while Gohan distracts him. In the middle of all this, Gohan musters up the strength to take on Vegeta completely by himself, and this is always a treat to watch considering that before, he would have been scared far away from wanting to even be near Vegeta. So at this point, we get to play as brave little Gohan facing off against this pure evil sadist. And sometimes it even feels like there's a bit of a rivalry between these two. This is still a pretty cool fight too, which then turns into Gohan also seeing the fake moon that Vegeta created just earlier to be able to transform into a giant great ape, and Gohan, because he still has his tail, ends up transforming into a great ape. Vegeta chops off Gohan's tail easily, but when reverting back, manages to slam himself onto Vegeta, leaving him incapable of fighting any longer. When Vegeta literally can't take any more beatings, Krillin tries to kill Vegeta while he can. Goku stops him to tell him that he wants to fight him again in the future. So Vegeta escapes in his ship, and everyone now needs time to heal after this battle and think about how to bring the rest of the fighters back to life. And after the saga ends, you just end up playing as Gohan, just running errands and doing side quests, and I've always enjoyed these little breaks in the game's story because it ends up feeling like one of the few moments where the game isn't trying to rush you through the story. I like the Saiyan saga in this game but I like the additional material that wasn't in the anime more than what they added, I would say. For the exception of the fight against Nappa and Vegeta, those were done incredibly well, and I had to commend CyberConnect or Bandai for doing such an amazing job here. But if I'm going to nitpick, Gohan launches a powered up Masenko at Nappa after Piccolo dies, which is awesome in the anime and completely absent from this game. Just a nitpick, but this does end up happening quite a bit later. But there was something that got fixed from the original version, I have to say, and it's that they ended up adding music and sound effects to the moments where the Z Fighters are getting annihilated by Nappa, which adds more weight to the moment, unlike in the first version where there just wasn't any music, and it felt totally empty. It almost felt like the beta version of the scene. And before, this lack of audio was insanely distracting, and I'm glad it got fixed, on PC at least. However, this game starts to set a pretty bad precedent early on, and that's that it won't really be treating itself like an RPG so much because it cares more about getting you through the story. And at this point, battles in the overworld, you will notice, will hardly net you any kind of experience at all. So why would you even bother training doing that? Or fighting and grinding, especially when the game will just bump you up to whatever level you need to be in order to continue the story. I really don't like that because it takes an element of RPGs that I really like away, and that is the level up grinding, because whatever strength my characters gain would feel earned instead of just having my hand held through these things. You also miss an opportunity to have us work for techniques like the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb, which Goku learned in the other world with King Kai. While I understand that Goku technically learned these off-screen, that didn't have to be the case in this game. At least let us play as Goku in the other world to some extent, even if it is just image training to, let's say, automatically be able to learn these abilities. But I would just like to feel like I've earned these, rather than not. So that power bump really did not feel earned at all, and this happened a couple of times throughout the saga. And we will be seeing this a lot throughout this game, which I believe is a problem. However, it is hard to deny the amount of love that went into the battles against the Saiyans, especially by the end of the saga. I think a lot of people will enjoy this section of the story, at least at the last few fights, quite a lot. Now, this last part was just the first quarter of what the story entails, and if you only do the story content, then it'll take you about maybe 4 to 5 hours to complete, per saga that is, and that's not including the time that you spend as Gohan doing side missions and things like that. And now that we got through this first section, I think it's time that we talked about some of the mechanics of this game in much greater detail. So during the earlier hours of the game, they teach you about some of the most important aspects of improving your characters as much as possible. You learn about cooking, which pretty much involves gathering ingredients from either purchasing them or hunting for them in order to have Chi-Chi, Goku's wife, make either a simple meal or a full course meal. Both meals have a temporary stat boost and a permanent one, but if you want to make the most out of your meals, then you should always aim for a full course meal, since those offer the biggest temporary and permanent boost. This is going to become a big deal in the post-game, but it's something that you can largely ignore during the story playthrough and be perfectly fine. However, you do have a level cap of initially 250, and it is raised to 300 with the latest inclusion of the DLC package. More on that later. But once you reach your level ceiling, you're going to want to get stronger in order to face more powerful foes, and the only way to get stat boosts at that point is by eating meals. But gathering the ingredients for the good meals can be extremely tedious. You can hunt around by attacking dinosaurs with your Ki Blast and hunting down golden animals too. You know, the works. But after a while, this starts to feel incredibly repetitive, and it's going to hurt more in the post-game. Something that can help make grinding and doing other activities within the world of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot are also going to be your soul emblem. And you actually get these as you do quests for characters, and you can level them up to increase the overall value that each soul emblem offers and really get the most out of this mechanic. This will be critical and reduce the amount of grinding that you need to do for a lot of different things, especially the cooking board, since if you complete it, you're guaranteed 2 full course meals out of the ingredients for just 1, making that grinding for ingredients literally half as exhausting. I recommend that you start collecting these early on and as soon as you get a chance, since they will all come in handy to some degree, regardless of which community board you're trying to fill up. As you've noticed from the gameplay shown so far, Kakarot's combat system is very fast paced and involves a lot of moving around the arena. It's basically like Xenoverse, but much more polished for a single player experience, but it does simplify some aspects here too. You only get 4 abilities in total per character, and that involves even using your strongest abilities. In other words, there aren't any ultimate abilities, but just abilities that are stronger than others. Each character also gets access to 4 transformation slots, but only 2 characters actually manage to fill these slots. Also, with these abilities and transformations, you get access to the skill tree, which allows you to unlock stronger versions of the abilities and transformations that you already possess, which is filled by using Z-Orbs that you collect from traveling around and completing quests, and also doing random encounter fights and things of the like. And you can find these orbs just about anywhere. Some are locked behind story progression, while others are locked behind the image training quest, which you can access at just about any time. These are going to be training sessions made for the purpose of completing them to unlock new ability. These are honestly pretty fun, but I don't like the needlessly tedious act of having to search around for D medals to be able to participate in any of these quests. This is the entrance fee for entering, and the prices can get pretty hefty later on, with them asking for 10, 12, or 15 D medals, which, by the way, you can pretty much only find one at a time, but from side quests, sometimes you can earn 3, and things of the like, and from talking to Master Roshi, he can also give you some every now and then after you have done some work around the overworld. I would say that the one thing that really received a lot of criticism from the community is really the combat system itself. Although since fights boil down to hitting your opponent a lot until they can't be staggered with some armor, then dodge whatever attack they launch after that, and rinse and repeat. While I understand that the combat can feel pretty repetitive and even agree to an extent, I actually enjoy it a lot as it is, especially later in the game when some of our favorite characters get new combo attacks that make battles feel more destructive. But I would also say that if you found Xenoverse's combat repetitive, then you might feel the same here too. But overall, I think it's great for a single-player experience, and while I can think of some things they could have done to improve upon it, I will just talk about that later. For now, I think that we should focus on the story itself, and that leads us onto the very next arc of the story. And so, the Frieza saga. Speaking for myself only, was not really my favorite saga in the series because it always felt very slow and monotonous, even though it has some of my favorite villains in the series, like Rikum and Frieza, for their respective personalities and movesets. However, I believe that this saga had the best structure and was actually the most fun one to play through in this entire game because the pacing is very nice here. We start with Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma arriving in Planet Namek in order to find the Namekian Dragon Balls and revive their friends since they can't use their own Dragon Balls back on Earth after Piccolo and by extension Kami, the creator of the Dragon Balls, died and disappeared with them. However, realizing that they are not the only ones who came to find the Dragon Balls, they've got 2 threats to deal with. Vegeta, who is still on the hunt for the Dragon Balls and is much more powerful than before, and Frieza and his army, which is a much, much bigger threat to the 2 little fighters. I think that there's a good amount of times with each perspective since it offers quite a bit of variety in what you do and who your enemies are. This even made the hunt for the Dragon Balls fun, since it usually isn't much fun to roam around for them, but this is also when we first get to play as Vegeta, and that becomes a ton of fun. First, we happily fight and destroy Kui for being a little punk, and then we move on to Dodoria, who had found Gohan and Krillin previously and flew after them to, well, destroy them. Krillin uses the solar flare to blind him and run away. That's when Vegeta comes across Dodoria and beats the living snot out of him. This wasn't an easy fight per se, since Dodoria is actually pretty fast with his attacks, but after that battle, Dodoria had to be spared in exchange for learning the truth about the destruction of planet Vegeta. Many years ago, Frieza had the Saiyans of Planet Vegeta working under him, and they would grow stronger after every fight. Realizing this, Frieza grew concerned that they would eventually get strong enough to overthrow his rule, so he took it upon himself to destroy the entire planet. Raditz, Nappa, Vegeta, and Goku were the only ones who weren't on the planet at the time, so they ended up surviving. After hearing this, Vegeta is noticeably annoyed, but denies the real reason why, and just proceeds to kill Dodoria with a ton of animosity. Next on his list is one of Frieza's special soldiers, Zarbon. But switching back, it's obvious that Gohan and Krillin are underpowered at this stage, which is why they keep having to hide around and run away at any sign of trouble. So, by chance, when they come across a little Namekian child by the name of Dende, they discover they can have their true potential unlocked by visiting the Grand Guru, who is essentially the ruler or leader of the Namekians per se, also known as the creators of the Namekian Dragon Balls. So Krillin goes first to have his potential boosted and gains a great amount of strength, according to him. And while this was happening, Vegeta had his ass handed to him by Zarbon and was brought back to the healing tank in their ship. Vegeta explodes out of the machine once he's healed, and then proceeds to toss the Dragon Balls that Frieza and his men had already collected, tossing them into locations where he could find them, but where the soldiers would have no idea where they are. Vegeta then escapes, and it's up to Zarbon to retrieve Vegeta to then get the Dragon Balls back. Vegeta comes across Krillin, who is holding one of the Dragon Balls, but before they can actually move forward or do anything, Zarbon appears and we engage in yet another fight. This time it was easier thanks to Vegeta's power-ups, but after the fight, he still takes the Dragon Ball from Krillin and leaves. So yeah, talk about an ending there. And then eventually it's Gohan's turn to do the exact same as Krillin earlier and have his full potential unlocked. So once he gets there, his true potential is shown to us, so far at least. With this new increase in power, they just might be able to survive until Goku gets here, which, by the way, Goku has been on his way to Namek after recovering from his near-death fight with Vegeta and has been training inside of the ship. But of course, we don't get to experience that. There then comes a point where the two Z fighters and Vegeta cross paths, and before Vegeta kills them and takes the Dragon Balls that they've collected, they all sense a very menacing power that is approaching Namek. Vegeta knows that it's the Ginyu Force, Frieza's elite soldiers who even have Vegeta shaking it in his boots. And Frieza does admit here that he didn't really have a choice, since most of his strongest soldiers had already been killed. As a result of this, they now have a common enemy and agree to face the Ginyu Force. They then just fly over to meet the Ginyu Force, and in an attempt to keep the Dragon Balls away from them, Vegeta tosses them away again, but Burter catches them before they can go any further, since he is the fastest member of the squad and he can apparently do stuff like that. And at this point, Ginyu leaves with all 7 of the Dragon Balls and to deliver them back to Frieza, which means that the other 4 members will now be fighting Vegeta, Gohan, and Krillin. The question here is if there is any chance that they will survive these fights whatsoever. And the first fight involves Gohan and Krillin versus Goldo, who is known for his psychokinesis abilities, and I kid you not when I say that this was one of the most challenging boss fights in this entire game. Goldo launches at you spears, boulders, and so much more, and getting to him while he does this is honestly pretty tough, but it's so much fun. However, Gohan and Krillin do manage to defeat Goldo after a while, and then Vegeta and the second member, Recoome, the best character ever, engage in combat, and we get to see some of the best animation work in this short series of fights. Vegeta launches his strongest move at Recoome in hopes of killing him, but in the most flamboyantly fantastic pose, Recoome shows himself to have taken some damage from the attack, his armor being blown off, but is far from defeated. And this just must have been incredibly humiliating for Vegeta and the rest of the fighters. Our heroes cannot keep up at this point, and that's when Goku finally shows up with a level up boost, of course. And the Z fighters and Vegeta watch as Goku engages Recoome and totally stomps. But immediately after that fight, we see my favorite bit of animation in this whole game with Recoome's ultimate ability. And I believe that this was the Recoome ultimate fighting pose, if I'm not mistaken, which, again, it just looks so cool on screen. But Goku cuts him short to one-shot him and Rikum is now down for the count. And Goku then has to deal with Birder and Jace, the other two lackeys, before having to fight the leader afterwards, Captain Ginyu himself. Jace survives the battles and flees to meet with Captain Ginyu. Gohan and Krillin split up to find the Dragon Balls, while Goku assumed that Vegeta would just join him in the coming battles against the rest of the Force. So they fly over and meet with Ginyu and Jace. Vegeta, being the snake that he is, leaves the battlefield and heads over to Frieza's ship to heal, leaving Goku by himself. So at this point, now it's just Goku versus Ginyu and Jace, and this fight can actually be pretty challenging. My recommendation is to go ahead and defeat Jace first, because his Crusher Ball can catch you off guard if you're not paying attention to him, which will happen if you're focusing on the main boss, which in this case is Ginyu. Ginyu is less annoying on the sideline though. They both lose the fight to Goku. Then Ginyu realizes that he's outmatched, just like the rest of his armada, so he resorts to switching bodies with Goku through his own technique. Jace, at this point being the only surviving lackey of the Ginyu Force, flees with Ginyu, and Goku is now in Ginyu's old weakened body. They come across the rest of the fighters, Krillin and Gohan, and they quickly realize that they aren't staring down at Goku, but there's obviously something wrong here. There's obviously an imposter. So another battle begins. And Vegeta then comes out with another level up boost and a new outfit, and stomps all the way through. However, at this point, Goku manages to get his body back, but is severely beaten. So Vegeta realizes that they can't be the only enemy left at this point, which in this case is going to be Frieza without Goku's help. You see, every time a Saiyan survives a near-death battle and is healed from it, they gain an extraordinary amount of strength, and that's what they often do to justify the level-ups, which is fine because they are following the story's logic, but it's when characters are supposed to be training, and we can't train with them, that I don't believe the level-up boosts are earned whatsoever. So while Goku is in the healing tank, Vegeta and the others recover from the last battle. And while Vegeta naps, Dende, Krillin, and Gohan take this opportunity to summon Porunga, which is going to be the dragon from Namek and that comes out of the Namekian Dragon Balls, with the first wish revolving around Piccolo being revived, and then the other was used for teleporting him somewhere on planet Namek. But before they can make their last wish, the Guru dies from his old age, and Porunga can no longer grant any wishes as he perishes along with them. Now Vegeta had already arrived pissed, since they used the Dragon Balls behind his back, and now he won't be able to gain immortality. However, Frieza also arrives and is beyond pissed that he too doesn't get to use the Dragon Balls for himself, since he also wanted immortality. At this point, Vegeta feels confident that he can take on Frieza in his current state, but before that can even happen, Vegeta eggs Frieza on to transform like the idiot that he is, and you will see a similar instance to this again later in the story. He transforms and the battle begins. Needless to say, they didn't stand a chance here, even if the fight was still pretty fun, but you will also notice that Vegeta just isn't really as involved anymore, after basically begging Frieza to transform. They take a big fat beating. Krillin cuts Frieza's tail off, and finally, Piccolo shows up. This time, he's at about the same strength as Frieza, after not only training in the other world with King Kai, but also fusing with another Namekian named Nail, who was actually the Grand Guru's personal guardian and one of the most powerful Namekians in the entire planet, whom Frieza almost killed before arriving at the battlefield already. This fight is pretty exciting, but it feels more like any other fight so far, even if it is still really fun to see Piccolo go so hard on Frieza. However, it's revealed that there are still 2 more transformations to go before Frieza reaches his full power. He transforms again, and now Piccolo and Gohan have to take on this much more powerful form of Frieza, and it is certainly a difficult fight, but at this point, he's no longer in the mood to play games with the Z Fighters and transforms straight into his final form, the one we all recognize and love. However, while this is happening, Vegeta enters the battlefield once more with the power boost after having asked Krillin to shoot him hard enough to leave him on the brink of death, and Dende with his healing abilities heals him, which gives him another boost in power. But it just wasn't enough for Frieza, and he tortures Vegeta for some time. Difficult as it may be to watch, Vegeta's pride, which has been built up, then shattered by the fact that he simply could never surpass Frieza, and his insecurities become much more obvious at this point. Finally, Goku is fully healed and rushes over to the battlefield. At this point, Vegeta will die from all of that damage he's taken, and his final words before leaving were the revelations of Frieza being the one that killed Goku's father, Vegeta's father, and the entire planet with them. And as they've always been forced to serve under him, he asked Goku to avenge everyone since Vegeta couldn't do it himself after all. Vegeta then passes away, and now it's Goku's turn to take on Frieza. This was a pretty cool boss fight, and I do appreciate how well it transitions into the Kamehameha times 20, and then further after, the giant spirit bomb that he unleashes on Frieza while seemingly taking him down. But that was a farce, as in the middle of their celebration, Frieza kills Piccolo, and then Krillin immediately after. This triggers the transformation that started it all. The legendary Super Saiyan finally awakens. Now, the next few fights are some of the most fun in this game, as you'll have to face Frieza in his current form while completely stomping with Goku's newfound might. Frieza then reaches 100% power himself for a more fair fight, though Frieza attempts to destroy planet Namek. He can survive in the vacuum of space, so he isn't really so concerned. Goku only has 5 minutes in order to defeat him, and defeat him he does. Goku then tries to leave, but Frieza begs him for help as he's on the ground, about to suffer a massive explosion of his own doing. In anger, but pity, he gives Frieza enough energy to escape the planet, and then proceeds to leave him behind. Frieza, however, does not settle for this and attempts to strike Goku with his power that he just gained, but immediately after fires back tenfold, taking down Frieza and now attempting an escape from this dying planet. Planet Namek finally explodes without us really knowing what happened to Goku at this point. And before this explosion happened, everyone else had returned to Earth, even Vegeta, and with the Dragon Balls, they revived everyone who had been killed by Frieza and his men. Now the Namekians stay on Earth for the time being until they can somehow bring their planet back with the Dragon Balls. And little by little, they bring back Tien and Chaozu, Yamcha, and now it's Goku's turn to be brought back, but Porunga is incapable of doing so because Goku refuses to return to Earth for the time being, which means that he's still alive, but he's somewhere else entirely. So now they just have to wait for Goku to return so that Gohan can see his father once again. I feel like this portion of the story received a lot of love and was beautifully done. It had me looking forward to the rest of the game, and considering that the Frieza saga is one of my least favorites from the anime, I knew that there was a lot of greatness to come later. And just like before, we play as Gohan to do some filler missions, which were all fun to do since it is like such a nice break from all of this action. The Frieza saga left a good taste in my mouth, and I wanted to see what the other half of the game would do to top this, since I probably couldn't have asked for a better interpretation in my opinion. Minus not being able to train as Goku in the spaceship before arriving to Namek. Another missed opportunity to allow for some actual, well-deserved growth, and the fact that we didn't get to fight Little Frieza in his first form, but those are smaller nitpicks to what is honestly a great arc. And now we've reached the Android Saga, which begins 1 year after the events in Planet Namek. Everyone senses a sinister power while on Earth, noticing that there is something great approaching. Gohan, Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, Piccolo, and even Vegeta, while carrying Bulma along, come to the same place where they believe this energy will be landing. It's revealed that Frieza is still alive and now powered up by cybernetic enhancements, and he comes to Earth with his father with the plan of first killing Goku and then destroying Earth. However, someone else shows up, a strange warrior with the coolest jacket from the 90s. He then slices up all of Frieza's soldiers, which only leaves Frieza, King Cold, and the strange warrior. After exchanging some minor insults, he reveals that he's arrived to kill Frieza before Goku arrives, as they all apparently know that Goku is just going to show up in about 3 hours. How does everyone know this? But anyway, this mysterious young man reveals to Frieza that he is also a Super Saiyan, and then transforms to take him on. This is a really cool fight that is packed with mystery, since we have no idea who this man is and why he can transform into a Super Saiyan. Frieza's moveset here is also just fucking awesome because he just throws a bunch of supernovas at you, and the whole fight is just beautiful. After the fight ends, we relive one of the most brutal scenes from the anime and a well deserved death scene. Finally, for Frieza, since he's basically been the most resilient cockroach ever. We skip a little bit of filler with the new Super Saiyan one-shotting King Cold and destroying Frieza's ship instead of having this whole interaction that they had in the anime, but that's totally fine by me. Literally leaving no traces of him and his army behind. Then everyone approaches Mr. Boldcut over here to try to figure out who he is. Everyone plays 21 questions with him, and he then neglects to answer every question for the exception of his age, which is 17 by the way. Finally, Goku arrives on Earth and is greeted by everyone for his return. Mr. Boldcut asks Goku if they can speak privately, and that's when he reveals everything to Goku. His name is Trunks, and he's from 20 years into the future. He came to the past to warn Goku about the upcoming android threat, where 2 androids in particular show up to kill everyone. He explains that everyone dies in the future, even Gohan, and that Goku dies from a heart virus, before even being able to fight at all. The only survivor from this massacre is Trunks. He also reveals that Vegeta is his father, which is why he can transform into a Super Saiyan, and that Bulma is his mother, hence why he's able to have a time machine at all, as Bulma is a mechanical genius, of course. He gives Goku some medicine to fight off the heart virus to make sure that everyone is ready to fight the androids 3 years from that current date, giving them a warning to train before said event. He then leaves, promising to come back to help in fighting the androids. Goku returns to everyone, but he can't tell them anything since he promised not to reveal Trunks' identity, as that can compromise him ever being born. But Piccolo overheard everything and informed everyone about the upcoming android assault without revealing the boy's true identity. This is when we get some time to chill before the android invasion, and I thought that this time was handled really well, as we can pretty much spend as much time just, killing time and doing side quests, as well as some necessary events before the 3rd year passes. We get more soul emblems, the chance to do some hunting, we even get to start collecting the Dragon Balls to start granting wishes. Some wishes are that we can ask for as many times as we want, but others we can only ask for once. Things like money, Z-orbs, and items we can always ask for, but the opportunity to fight previous enemies we can only request once, since after being done, they become side quests and we can get soul emblems of the villains, which is honestly really cool. But with that aside, we do get to meet Launch again as Goku. We do some training around, and we even get to play some lame-ass racing minigames that I never want to do ever again, because I just found the minigames to be boring, personally. However, time eventually passes after you decide to continue on with the story. Everyone then meets at the specified location, 5.5 miles off of South City. On this island, we get to meet baby Trunks, who had just been born recently. Everyone except Vegeta showed up to the fight against the androids. However, they aren't living entities, so you can't sense their energy, which means that you just have to find them yourself. You eventually come across the androids, who have just attempted to kill Yamcha, of course, leaving him out of commission yet again for the upcoming battles. Goku convinces the androids to move the fight away from civilians to a deserted area. They reveal to everyone that they're aware of everyone's powers and capabilities, as they've had a spying bot keep an eye on them after Goku destroyed the Red Ribbon Army many years ago. And before the events of Dragon Ball Z, however, they missed the events from Namek, which means that they were caught off guard when Goku transformed into a Super Saiyan and begins to fight the fat android, Android 19. This fight is pretty cool and does require more patience than most fights, as these androids are capable of absorbing energy during battle, which means that you have to use energy attacks very, very carefully, and mostly stick with physical ones. Otherwise, they will absorb said attacks and heal for much more than what you would have dealt in damage. These fights can be pretty challenging, but Goku eventually beats him, and in the middle of another attack, he attempts to use a Kamehameha on Android 19. Everyone is noticing that Goku simply isn't fighting at his best, and they all realize that it's the heart virus catching up to him since he just never took his medicine, like an idiot. So Android 19 absorbs the Kamehameha, and then manages to sit on Goku to take his energy. But Vegeta then kicks him off of Goku, and we witness yet another great event take place. Vegeta transforms into a Super Saiyan himself and takes on Android 19. Easily winning the battle, 19 is now afraid of him, and Vegeta launches his new attack, the Big Bang attack, on him to destroy him once and for all. Now everyone is ready to gang up on the weaker Android 20, but knowing that he is outmatched, he runs away, and everyone, yet again, has to go hunting for him without knowing his location. He then catches Piccolo off guard, but Gohan knocks Android 20 off of him, and Piccolo decides to take him on by himself. This is a similar battle to Android 19 versus Goku, but Android 20 is more challenging here, since he's even more unpredictable, and even has an ability where if he even touches you, he grapples you and then drains your energy, healing himself and dealing a decent amount of damage to you as well. However, I managed to beat him by spamming the Demon Flash attack since it's got good range and it is a physical attack that can't be absorbed. And after this battle, Bulma appears on her plane to say, "Hey guys," and Android 20 takes advantage of that distraction by launching a laser beam to knock over Bulma's plane and create a smokescreen. Then he runs off and Trunks shows up to save Bulma and his baby self before anything happens to them. And Trunks then confronts Vegeta about why he didn't do anything to save Bulma and his son, and Vegeta responds with a lack of care for either of them in this instance. Trunks then explains that the androids that they've been fighting are not from his future. He then proceeds to describe the androids he remembers, naming them as Android 17 and 18, which, may I add, he should have just done this to begin with to save everyone time. He realizes that the future has changed in many ways, as events have just been turning out very differently than intended. And Bulma confirms to them that Android 20 was actually just Dr. Jor-El, the creator of the androids, who probably just turned himself into an android in order to preserve his life for as long as possible until the real androids were complete. She points them towards where the laboratory is, and when they show up, Android 17 kills Dr. Jor-El. Now we get to see both Android 17 and 18, but there's a third one, Android 16, one which Trunks does not recognize at all. Since they all had the objective of finding Goku, they leave the Z-Fighters alone, but Vegeta isn't having any of that, so he chases after them. We then catch up to the androids, and Vegeta starts to pick fights. So Android 18 fights Vegeta, and this isn't that tough of a fight, really, since 18 really only has one move that she keeps spamming, though it's sometimes a little bit hard to avoid, considering that she just keeps doing it. However, the Big Bang shows us how overpowered it is due to its range, and we eventually get the best out of her. Android 18 then proceeds to mop the floor with Vegeta in this cutscene. On the other side, Android 17 one-shots Piccolo, Trunks, and Tien, while leaving Krillin out of it since he hadn't even tried to fight the androids at all. Krillin questions the androids' motives, and they just respond that they're interested in killing Goku since he's the strongest warrior around. 18 then walks up to Krillin and kisses him on the cheek. In the game, this seems pretty random to me, but it makes a little more sense in the anime. Krillin rushes over to the fighters and gives everyone a senzu bean. Vegeta is really pissed at this point and really just flies off, as even after achieving his Super Saiyan transformation, he wasn't strong enough to defeat even one of those androids. Trunks then explains that the androids in this timeline seem to be much more powerful than the ones in his, and he would at least put up a fight by himself against the two of them at the same time. Now Piccolo rushes off on his own as well, and only Krillin has an idea of what's going on. He informs Tien and Trunks of Piccolo's possible intentions on the matter. You see, there have been a lot of situations in this game where they actually hint at this eventually happening, where Piccolo finally fuses back with Kami, as they used to be a single entity before splitting apart. And now Piccolo arrives at Kami's lookout, so completely reluctant on what he should do, considering that Piccolo has already prided himself off of his own identity. So while this is happening, Tien leaves the group, and Trunks and Krillin agree that they need to move Goku and Chi-Chi away from their home, since the androids are very likely to show up there and kill Goku while he's incapacitated. They arrive to warn everyone, finding Yamcha there as well, and they start to move over to Kame House, since it's a remote location, and they're not likely to check, at least not for a while. In the meantime, Kami begins to worry about another mysterious threat roaming the earth that is growing quite powerful, which definitely came out of nowhere. So it's a nice little mystery to explore, if I do say so myself. But how little is it really? Kami reveals this information to Piccolo as he realizes that he no longer can stand back and just watch this being growing stronger from this lookout. He needs to act. Piccolo then starts this Q&A with Kami, and they ultimately agree that they need to fuse into one being once more. Once the fusion of the two ends, it's obvious that Piccolo's personality has changed, but they don't quite emphasize they changed so much. So Piccolo adapted a lot of Kami's personality traits, and considering that the two were complete opposites, Piccolo abandoned his dream for world domination and now fights for the greater good. But that doesn't mean that he's any less of a badass in battle or when interacting with his enemies. But here we have a new character that no longer goes by either Piccolo or Kami, and just a Namekian that forgot his real name. He then rushes over to Ginger Town to encounter the being that's been wreaking havoc on the surface, and he finds himself with this absolutely disgusting bug creature thing who simply refuses to answer any of Piccolo/Kami's questions. So that's when the battle begins between the two. Here, he gains access to a new transformation, which is used as a power boost, and when you're out of ki, you will revert back to your normal form, just like the Super Saiyan transformation. Also, this creature has the ability to sneak up on you and absorb your energy, just like Dr. Gero, which was an ability I saw too much of during this battle, so it's certainly challenging, but staying very mobile throughout the fight can help with that. Once this fight is finally over, our hero pretends to be heavily injured to squeeze information out of Cell, because Cell at this point believes that Piccolo/Kami is just about to die. And Cell, by the way, is the name of this life form that stands right in front of us here. He tells us that he's an android created by Dr. Gero, whose full potential has not been achieved, and he needs to absorb Android 17 and 18 in order to reach that potential. He also notes that he came from the future, since he isn't meant to be born yet and is still being developed in Dr. Gero's underground laboratory. He also mentions that he's composed of Piccolo's, Goku's, Vegeta's, Frieza's, and many other cells, which is why our hero sensed so many different energies emerging from him, and it also explains how he knows many of their techniques too. I mean, he did use the special beam cannon and the Kamehameha throughout this fight. After Piccolo finds all of this out, both Trunks and Krillin show up to help Piccolo, but Cell runs away, realizing that he's outmatched by all of them combined. And Vegeta then shows up completely dumbfounded by how much more powerful Piccolo has become since the last time they saw each other, which was just earlier that same day. He's told that he has finally fused with Kami to become the being he is right now. Now, Vegeta is still pissed, so he runs off and Trunks tries to chase after him, but Piccolo stops him from going since he understands that Vegeta's pride has been heavily wounded and simply needs time to himself. Then Trunks and Krillin head out to Dr. Gero's present laboratory to destroy the current cell that's being developed and avoid another monstrosity from re-emerging later on. They also manage to find some of the blueprints to Androids 17 and 18, which they then decide to take to Bulma's host to see if there's anything that she can do to stop the androids. After this happens, Trunks decides to meet up with Vegeta and ask to train with him to, well, no avail. Meanwhile, Piccolo, Tien, and Yamcha are at the Kame house to protect Goku while he recovers. But unfortunately, the androids eventually end up making it to Goku's house, and Piccolo has to confront them. And Piccolo then moves the androids away from the Kame house to a remote island where they can battle without hurting anyone else. And this is when Piccolo and 17 start to fight, while 18 and 16 just kind of watch the battle unfold. Everyone departs from the Kame house as well, and Goku finally wakes up from his slumber, having recovered from the heart virus. He then realizes the danger that approaches with the new life form, Cell now being brought into the mix. Goku then chooses to meet up with Trunks and Vegeta, as he believes that he will need everyone's help in order to manage this incoming threat. He convinces Vegeta and Trunks to train together in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, which is a place where they can get 1 year's worth of training in just 1 day, since 1 year in the Time Chamber is just 1 day in the present world. Trunks and Vegeta go in first, and we are met with what is an interesting matchup here. You play as Vegeta and you have to fight Trunks, which is a pretty fun fight if I'm completely honest, like just on its own, and one that I'm glad we got to experience in this game, since we do get to see a little more insight into how they were both feeling during their time together and about the idea of spending an entire year together, something that they've definitely never done before. Now we skip over to the results of the aftermath of the battle between Piccolo and 17, where they appear to be just about equals in terms of strength. Unfortunately, Cell appears with a power boost, and then Piccolo nor 17 stand a match against him whatsoever. Cell has absorbed so many people that he has gained a lot of power, enough to trump the two of them through their attempts. However, this is when 16 realizes that he can no longer just sit back and watch his friends die or get absorbed in his instance, and steps in to trample Cell in his amazing piece of animation right here. However, Cell, rather than confronting 16 directly, just sneaks up on 17 and absorbs him, attaining a brand new form and a lot more power as a result. No one on this island stands a chance against him, and that's when only one daring warrior attempts to stop Cell, or at least stall him for as long as he can. Tien appears to spam his tri-beam on Cell to give 18 an opportunity to escape, and she takes advantage of that to run away with 16. Goku, worried that Tien will exhaust himself using the tri-beam over and over, warps over to the battlefield to already find Tien on the ground. They skipped an important scene here, as it's kind of vague as to what actually happened here. Without watching the show, you would have thought that Cell just beat the hell out of Tien, when Tien just tired himself out from spamming the tri-beam. With that said, Goku engages in combat with Cell, and this is a really fun fight since we haven't gone to fight as Goku for quite a while now, so it is actually nice to see him in action once more. However, even though Goku wins this relatively easy fight, he realizes that he cannot beat Cell in his current form and instead opts to retrieve Tien and Piccolo while they're still alive and warns Cell that they will face off again in the future before leaving the battlefield. Returning to the lookout, we see that Trunks and Vegeta are now leaving the time chamber and have gotten much more powerful, while Trunks also grew out his hair. Bulma appears to give everyone a copy of Vegeta's armor, and then Vegeta and Trunks head off to find Cell and kill him, while now it's Goku and Gohan's turn to enter the time chamber and train. Here we get to see yet another interesting battle of Gohan versus Goku, and while it is a tougher fight than the last family feud that we saw, we are informed that Goku will turn Gohan into a Super Saiyan during their time in the chamber. At this point, we switch perspectives back to Vegeta, and we can see him flying over to Cell's location, and we cut to Cell trying to destroy an entire island to try and lure Android 18 out of her hiding spot, since he wants to absorb her still. Well, Vegeta appears to interrupt this session, and he comes in as confident as ever. Vegeta then powers up, transforming into his Grade 2 form of his Super Saiyan transformation, which is a different and more powerful transformation that looks absolutely amazing. I believe they did a great job in capturing this moment. Speaking of which, the battle that comes immediately after is pretty damn fun, and you just feel Vegeta's strength boost here. It's a really fun fight that is just captured beautifully in this game. After this battle, Cell feels very defeated and frustrated since Vegeta is much more powerful than he is. However, Vegeta has become so stupidly arrogant that when Cell yells about how he would beat Vegeta easily if he could absorb Android 18, he just let Cell go after 18 because he wanted to be challenged. Meanwhile, Krillin has been given the remote he needs in order to shut down Android 18 and finally destroy her to prevent Cell from being completed and stopping the android. But Krillin is very hesitant since he got that sweet kiss from 18 just earlier on and couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he reveals himself and destroys the remote and then just yells at 18 and 16 to run off. So when Trunks steps in and blocks Cell's path, Vegeta intervenes and Cell gets his wish of absorbing Android 18. Now Cell has attained his perfect form and we are approaching the very climax of the saga. From here on, I start to have quite a few issues with the way this particular set of events were conveyed in the game, since there are key and iconic moments missing from the main series. Okay, so firstly, Vegeta confronts Perfect Cell, and the dialogue throughout this fight is good and conveys the idea that Vegeta is about to be broken very soon, but remember that moment during the Frieza saga, when Vegeta shot his strongest attack at Frieza and he kicked it back, leaving him feeling completely and utterly defeated. Well, they omitted a more powerful moment, which is when Vegeta reveals his new move, the Final Flash, and Cell just decides to take it head on. When Vegeta finally launches the attack, Cell is missing part of his upper body and pretends like he's in pain to literally then say, JK, and regenerates thanks to Piccolo's cells. Vegeta felt defeated at this moment, and this is when Cell decided it was time to deliver the finishing blow to knock him out. They miss that part entirely, and instead we are just told that the Vegeta got knocked out. But this next part is even more egregious if you ask me, and I really can't look past this at all. So Trunks asks Krillin to take Vegeta with him so that Vegeta doesn't die while Trunks confronts Perfect Cell. The build-up is there, and we see that Trunks is confident that he can win this fight. Well, we skip over to Krillin just saying that Trunks' power level is dropping significantly, and then we just cut back to Trunks moping around. For such an underutilized character in this game, this is a disgustingly lazy approach to trying to get through this part of the story. What actually happened is that Trunks showed Cell that he could reach a level beyond that of Vegeta's through Super Saiyan Grade 3, and after his transformation scene, he faces off against Cell. He's performing pretty well at first, but then becomes too slow for Cell and loses the fight as a result. This is an important moment for Trunks because it continues to iterate that he just doesn't have the power needed to save any future, whether it's his own or the current timeline. No matter what he does, this is a big defeat for Trunks that hardly gets referenced in the game at all, and this is the worst decision they made with the story. Easily. So now Cell tells Trunks that he wants to hold a tournament where Cell fights everyone of the Z fighters, and if they win, then the planet is spared, but if they lose, then Cell will kill everyone on Earth. Then he leaves. Krillin takes the broken Android 16 with him to Capsule Corp, while Trunks takes Vegeta with him back to the lookout. However, Vegeta's new transformation isn't one he gets to keep at all, and simply goes back to using his original Super Saiyan form rather than embracing the new one he just got, and the same goes for Trunks, by the way. The last time you get to play as Trunks, should I remind you, is when you play as Trunks to travel to meet with Vegeta for training. Long before the event we are currently seeing here, which is beyond disappointing. And you don't get to play as Trunks again until the post-game, and it has no relation to the main story or to any story that they're trying to tell whatsoever. And so, before leaving the time chamber, we get to fight as Gohan again with Goku in his Super Saiyan form to show his progression throughout, which is very much appreciated, and this fight was a lot of fun as well. All of the Z fighters get to see Goku and Gohan leave the time chamber and their Super Saiyan forms, vowing to stay in that form so that they can become used to handling the Super Saiyan form without expending much energy. Cell then televises the event to everyone so that they understand the rules, notifying everyone who wants to participate that the tournament will begin in 10 days. Goku decides that he and Gohan will rest for 3 days, train 3 days, and rest for another 3 days until the day of the tournament. During this time, we get to play as Goku and Gohan during some side quests along the way. One of the quests that stands out to me most is actually a quest where you visit Bulma and come across the newly repaired Android 16. He says that he wants to test out how he will perform with his new repairs, but asks Gohan to go along with him too. They seem to have a nice connection since they both like animals and talk about the beauty of life until poachers arrive and Gohan destroys their little robots. After that is said and done, 16 reveals that he just wanted to test Gohan's abilities, but after watching him fight, he is confident that he can win, and also mentions that he feels like the two are very much alike. Yeah, this was a nice moment to witness as it adds more context to what will happen just a little bit later. And so the day of the tournament comes and we meet Mr. Satan, the world champion. He challenges Cell to a fight since he thinks he can beat him. The Z fighters arrive just in time to watch this train wreck occur. Mr. Satan attacks Cell and does virtually nothing to him just to get pimp slapped and somehow survive. And Goku jumps in to take charge, and while Cell was hoping to leave Goku for last, he's just gonna have to deal with it. This was a great fight considering that we just completely ignored the platform and fly around attacking each other. It's kind of hilarious in the context of the tournament, but it's perfectly reasonable because it does make for a great battle. And after the fight, Goku seems very tired, and Vegeta, of all people, says that Goku would never give up and must have something up his sleeve in order to win. And he wasn't wrong about the second part, but Goku withdrew. Everyone is surprised at this because no one, literally no one, expected him, of all people, to give up on any fight. However, Goku is confident that there is another warrior who can defeat Cell, and that is his son, Gohan. This is something that even Gohan doubts he's capable of doing, but Goku is very adamant that he can do it. So Gohan jumps into the battlefield, raising his power to levels the rest of them have never seen before. So much so that even Piccolo comments on Gohan's development from how he used to cry or get highly emotional every time he fought to how he is now, a calm and composed warrior. That's when the battle begins. This battle is certainly fun since this feels like more of a boss battle than Goku's fight did, and Gohan's moveset is pretty cool too. However, while this battle could last a little while, the real payoff, or I should say the real battle, starts after the next couple of scenes. After the first part of this fight, Gohan tells Cell that he has a hidden power that everyone has told him about since he was much younger, but he hates fighting and has only done it up until this point because he had to, but not because he ever liked the thrill of battle. And this here is very consistent with Gohan's dialogue up until this very moment. This point is driven home even further by the fact that Goku is completely blinded by the fact that Gohan is very close to letting loose against Cell, and they just need to let Cell torture him for a little bit longer. And Piccolo is the one that gives Goku an idea of what Gohan is really thinking as a child who has been forced into all of this from the very beginning. He is just wondering why his dad isn't stepping in to help him. He's just a kid. Android 16 then sneaks up on Cell to grab him with the idea of self-destructing and taking Cell with him. However, the explosion attempt fails and Krillin tells 16 that while he was being repaired, they'd remove the bomb inside of him. In shock, 16 cannot move and Cell takes that chance to blow him into many pieces with barely his head withstanding. At this point, Cell isn't having that and just wants to test Gohan's theory. He then summons his own children, the Cell Juniors, who are just as powerful as Cell is, and there is one for each Z fighter present except for Gohan. We then play as Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks as a team, but mind you, you play as Goku as your main fighter. Trunks is just a side fighter in this fight, so that doesn't count as us being able to use him again before he eventually leaves. And we get to fight as a team in order to defeat a team of 3 Cell Juniors after that's done, we see that everyone has been defeated by the Cell Juniors, and Gohan still can't bring it upon himself to do anything about it because he's afraid. Android 16 then tries to speak to Mr. Satan and asks him to please deliver his head to Gohan. And Mr. Satan agrees to carry him over and do what he can do in order to help out, though he does understand that he is powerless compared to everyone else there. When he's close enough, he tosses his head over, and he lands perfectly in front of Gohan. Android 16 then tells him that it's not a sin to fight for justice or for what he believes is right. He mentions that he loves all living things on Earth, except Goku, of course, and he asks Gohan to please protect the lives he grew to love so much while he was around. Cell then steps on him, killing him for good. Gohan, at this point, snaps and finally lets loose into a flurry of energy, where simply everyone, including Cell, have to stop in awe of Gohan's power. He has reached a Super Saiyan 2, the true level beyond Super Saiyan that every other Saiyan training for this battle has attempted to achieve and only Gohan could. Now Gohan sprints towards every Cell Junior, killing each one in front of his friend's eyes. He looks like a completely different person at this point. And once that's done, he's ready to take on Cell, and this time this is a much different Gohan that we are looking at and even playing as. Obviously, he is more powerful in this state, and that makes the fight with Cell a cakewalk in spite of his attempts to clone himself to get me, shooting a bunch of beams and, well, just getting destroyed by little Gohan here. After this fight, Cell spits out Android 18 and reverts back to his previous form. In desperation, Cell expands into a giant bomb where he will explode in just 1 minute and take the entire planet with him. Gohan thinks he can stop him, but just one touch could trigger the explosion. In other words, everyone is doomed. However, Goku decides that there's only one way of dealing with this problem. He says goodbye to his friends and warps to where Cell is to tell Gohan that he's proud of him and that he's grown into someone great. He then warps away with Cell to King Kai's planet, where he explodes and kills everyone on it, leaving the Earth safe from Cell. Everyone is in awe as to what just happened and now have to cope with Goku's sacrifice, especially Gohan, who lost his father due to his arrogance and refusing to take out Cell before he could attempt anything like this. Now he's left to live with that regret for the rest of his life. But then thunder struck, and all of a sudden a laser beam is shot, immediately killing future Trunks. Vegeta and everyone else cannot believe what just happened. We then see Cell, much more powerful than before, and even a lot more confident, I should say. But at least he's kind enough to tell us how he managed to survive and all that. Essentially, when he exploded, he did spread into many pieces, but one of the pieces that remained intact was his core, which is all he needs to be able to regenerate. Because he's got Saiyan cells every time he survives a near-death experience, he becomes much more powerful, which allows him to retain his perfect form. He also managed to somehow learn Goku's instant transmission while he was at it, and make it back to Earth without issues. Vegeta then snaps and promises to kill Cell, no matter what. In this beautiful bit of animation, we get to see Vegeta spam every move in his arsenal against Cell to avenge Trunks in a very desperate attempt. But he fails and is immediately taken out by Cell. This is when we fight Cell one more time with Gohan, and this fight is even more intense than the last one, with a lot more to dodge. So far, it is going to be a great fight, and Cell's power-up becomes apparent here too. I mean, he can make more clones. After this fight, Cell tries to kill Vegeta again, and this time Gohan jumps in to protect him. But as a result, he loses the function of one of his arms. But at least he did manage to save Vegeta after all. Cell then launches his most powerful attack, a Kamehameha, that will destroy everything and everyone, and only Gohan can counter it with his own, even if it's just with one arm. In this clash of beams, Cell gains the advantage, which leaves Gohan mentally defeated, and like he simply couldn't protect everyone as entrusted. But Goku calls him from the other world to offer him the support he needs, telling Gohan that everything rests in his hands, and that Cell should be nothing for him. He just needs to let loose of all of his power. That's when Vegeta strikes Cell, though it hardly does anything to him beyond just annoy him. That's when Gohan lets everything out in his father's son Kamehameha, which overwhelms Cell and takes him out for good. This time, he will never return, all thanks to Gohan. The battle is now over, and Gohan falls all the way over to the ground in relief. Everyone celebrates the victory over Cell, and they all take hold of Gohan to make sure that they can take him back to the lookout. Now, as of now, Mr. Satan is left on the battlefield, and he's able to take credit for the entire victory here, since there weren't any records from Cell being killed after Mr. Satan arrived, but he survived. So everyone just buys it in pure hilarity. Vegeta, even after surviving this battle, had his pride broken by his being saved by Goku's son, and Goku in the past too. It doesn't feel like he can achieve the same heights they have, as he's always had to catch up. So he leaves the battlefield, vowing not to fight ever again. At the lookout, they go ahead and summon Shenron through the Dragon Balls, and they have two wishes to make. The first one is to go ahead and revive everyone who was killed by Cell, and that includes Trunks, who gets up to see everyone and witnesses the aftermath of the battle. But Goku was not brought back because the Dragon Balls on Earth can't revive people who have already died in the past. But Goku reminds everyone that it's okay. He attracts a lot of enemies to Earth, since just about every villain to conspire throughout the game on Earth has been because they want Goku's head, so it's better if he stays dead. He tells everyone that he will be alright where he is, but ruins his speech by saying that he does feel marginally bad for leaving Chi-Chi and Gohan behind. This is just ridiculous, but he pretty much says goodbye to everyone. Gohan keeps his chin up, accepting Goku's decision. But there is still one wish left, and Krillin tries to use it to make the androids human, but Shenron declines because he says he doesn't have the power to do so. With that said, Krillin instead asks to have their bombs removed from their bodies so that they're no longer at risk of exploding, and that wish gets granted. Android 18 comes out to yell at Krillin, and then she leaves saying, "Later," which everyone takes as her wanting to see Krillin again. Now everyone parts ways and heads home, with this victory being well deserved. On the following day, everyone meets with Trunks to see him leave for his timeline, and even Vegeta is there to greet him. And now, Earth is at peace with Gohan being the true warrior to have saved the Earth. After this, you do get some more downtime to do some side quests and things of the like, which was fun, and it was nice to get to play as Gohan at this stage. My overall thoughts on the section of the story are that it did come off a little bit messy in some places and rushed in others, not to mention unacceptable shortly after Cell attains his perfect form, but the climax of the story was very well done here, and it was one of the most exciting endings to witness so far. I think they did put love into very selective parts of the story, though, which I thought was pretty odd considering how many people love the saga overall. I like the saga myself, but maybe not for the same reasons that others do. People really love Cell as a villain, and I just really like Future Trunks as a character. And finally, we move on to the final saga in this game, and that is going to be the Buu Saga. This, though many people don't really feel this way, is my favorite saga of the entire Dragon Ball Z timeline, because the things that take place here are pretty insane and are such a departure from what we've seen so far. But the saga starts off with an introduction to Gohan, who is now a teenager attending high school, and this is where we see him on his way to school. We are told that Gohan still tries to fight off crime around the city, but because his family wants to try and live a normal life, he transforms into a Super Saiyan to disguise his appearance when he jumps in to help. Rumors of a Golden Warrior start to spread as a result, and one girl actually saw him do all of this at one point. Gohan heads to school and meets two giant puns, Iraza and Sharpener, who are as irrelevant to the story as you imagine. Videl, however, is revealed to be Mr. Satan's daughter, which surprises Gohan quite a bit. She shows her suspicions towards Gohan by pointing out that he has a similar build to the Golden Warrior, as they've been referring to Super Saiyan Gohan as up to this point. And then he starts to shake in his own boots. Then he plays some baseball, and this is a minigame I don't plan on touching again, so I'm going to skim through that. Gohan decides that he has to figure out a way to fight crime without revealing his identity, since transforming into Super Saiyan just isn't good enough. So he ends up asking Bulma for help on the matter. While she thinks of something, Gohan goes ahead and talks to Trunks, who is now 8 years old, and they clearly get along pretty well, I would say. But as soon as Gohan visits Vegeta, he's already ranting about how Gohan is out of shape and how Trunks will become a stronger warrior than him in no time if that continues. Gohan's costume is ready, and now he feels well equipped to fight crime. The next few events as Gohan's alter ego, the Great Saiyaman, feel like doing side quests since you're helping launch with Tien's farm, fighting off Cybermen, etc. But most importantly, we also get to meet Goten, Gohan's little brother, who is now 7 years old and was conceived during Goku's time after leaving the time chamber, but more on him later. However, as a little bit of time passes, Gohan comes across Videl, who's fighting some armed criminals and is winning until they pull out a gun, and that's when Gohan intervenes. We get to see his little dance again, and then he takes care of the grunts, of course. He makes a few mistakes to give his identity away to Videl, such as addressing her by her name and obviously not doing a very good job at masking his voice. Videl gives Gohan a ride on her plane, and that's when they talk about his true identity. And she makes the conclusion that Goku, the world martial arts champion before her father, was Gohan's dad, and proceeds to then push him to participate in the tournament, or she will reveal his identity to everyone in their school. So he reluctantly agreed. Before parting ways, Videl also asked Gohan to teach her how to fly at some point, which he also ends up agreeing to. Gohan makes another visit to Bulma about needing a different way of masking his identity during the tournament without using any kind of protective gear, since it's just not allowed, so he can't continue to use his helmet. So she gives him sunglasses and a headband to get the job done. Vegeta jumps into the conversation saying that he will also be joining the tournament to test Gohan's strength. And then right after, Goku calls in from the other world to say that he's being allowed a single visit of 24 hours from the other world to participate in the tournament, and that he looks forward to seeing everyone again. That motivates everyone in the room to participate, especially Vegeta. Gohan then lets Krillin, Piccolo, and even Goten know about the tournament coming up. And by the way, during this time skip, Krillin and 18 got together and had a little girl named Marin. That's very cute. From here, Gohan returns home and asks if Goten will train with him for the upcoming tournament. Gohan prepares his gi and then transforms into a Super Saiyan. Then it's revealed that Goten can transform too, but when asked how he did it or when, he just replies with, "I don't remember," which is really dumb of them to do, because this does not get addressed at all later either. The sparring match against Goten is actually quite the challenge, considering that he is a level higher than Gohan and will rush towards you very, very often. This fight was really fun. Then Videl shows up saying that she came to train with Gohan, and that's when he starts to teach her how to fly. After very little time, she learns how to fly just fine and then agrees to meet Gohan at the tournament. Everyone is training at this point, including Vegeta and Trunks, and even he transforms like nothing. And Vegeta asked how he managed it, and then asked if Goten could also transform, and was shocked to hear that they both could, which landed us on one of the best lines in the saga. What is this? A Super Saiyan bargain sale? Which he's totally justified in being frustrated and confused about, since they can just do it. And it took them a lot of training, a lot of suffering to actually get to that point. But anyway, now we arrive at the day of the tournament. And from here, the story will be on rails, so there's no turning back after entering the tournament until you finish the game. And they make it very clear before entering, so do your thing and complete all of your side quests before jumping in. Now, luckily for most, this saga is easily the shortest of them all, or at least as long as the Saiyan saga from earlier on, but this one's a lot more fun in my opinion. So everyone is just anxiously waiting for Goku to return as promised, and he just flies down with the biggest smile on his face. Everyone looks really happy to see him, and Goten, just meeting his father for the first time, was really embarrassed at this point and hid behind his mother, Chi-Chi. The adults plus Gohan head over to the waiting room, and Goten and Trunks get a little bit of time to fool around the city for a little bit, but you soon after get caught by Chi-Chi and Bulma, hence brought back to the tournament grounds to watch. Mind you, this is the only time that you get to play as Goten at all, but this little piece of content is appreciated nonetheless. Now the tournament begins and everyone is ready to participate, but before they can continue onward, they are stopped by a mysterious figure and another man who looks mad all of the time. He introduces himself to Goku and then flies off. Piccolo feels that there is something strange about these two. This gets proven later when Piccolo gets matched up with Shin and immediately withdraws after realizing who he actually is. We also get to see that Videl has to fight one of the brutes with a strange energy known as Popovich, and we see her get tortured for a little while. Gohan begins to lose his patience at the sight of Videl being brutalized this way, so much so that he transforms into a Super Saiyan and prepares to jump. However, the fight stops and Videl is considered the loser of this battle. Gohan comes out to promise Popovich that he won't get away with what he did to Videl. They then rush over to the infirmary where Gohan gives Videl a senzu, and shortly after taking it, she just recovers, just like that. And then Vegeta is still rearing for his match against Goku in the tournament as they were paired up to fight. But more important things begin to take place as now it's Gohan's turn to fight, and he's up against Kibito, Shin's friend, as we know him now. Kibito asks Gohan to show him his Super Saiyan form, and in questioning why he should do that, Piccolo nods at him to just do it. So he offers to transform to Super Saiyan 2 instead, which he does. After this happens, Popovich and Yamu ambush Gohan to try and take his energy. Normally, he would have destroyed them both easily, but Shin stopped Gohan from moving with his magic so that his energy could be stolen. Once that happened, Yamu and Popovich flew away, so Shin asked if the Z-Fighters would be willing to follow him towards where those two guys are headed. They pretty much all agree, but Vegeta insists on his fight with Goku, which he then promises to just fight him later. They all fly away, and Videl comes out to see Gohan while Kibito heals him. After he recovers, all three of them fly together to meet with Shin. In the meantime, Shin reveals his true identity as being the Supreme Kai, who is the god above all other gods in the Dragon Ball universe, at least as far as we know so far. There are still hierarchies above him, but more on that later. He tells everyone that the reason why he came to Earth is because there's a massive threat that is just about to emerge, known as Majin Buu. This being was powerful enough to kill his fellow Kais, and as a result, while they couldn't stop him, they had to seal him away instead. The evil wizard Babidi is trying to release Majin Buu from his seal to control him with the same evil magic his father used when Majin Buu was running around. They're here to stop Babidi from doing this at any cost whatsoever, which is why he felt like he needed to test the Saiyan's strength before dragging them along on this upcoming battle. Kibito pretty much tells the same thing to Gohan and Videl, though Videl can no longer keep up with them, so she had to turn back, asking Gohan to take care of this upcoming threat. They eventually catch up with the Supreme Kai and everyone else. Then they arrive at their destination. They notice a spaceship where a soldier known as Pui Pui greets the bald guys from earlier. Then Babidi comes out as well, but he comes with the king of the demon realm, Deborah, right by his side. After attaining Gohan's energy, Pui Pui kills the bald one, and then Deborah notices that there are others hiding in wait, so Babidi orders him to dispatch of some of them. In the process, he immediately kills Kibito with a blast, and then spits on Piccolo and Krillin to turn them into stone. This only leaves Gohan, Goku, Vegeta, and the Supreme Kai to fight. And Deborah and Babidi retreat, and the rest of the fighters follow suit into Babidi's spaceship. Inside, they are greeted by Pui Pui, who threatens to kill them all, but Vegeta jumps into the fray, claiming that he alone can kill Pui Pui. This next fight is a lot of fun, but it isn't as mechanically interesting as some of the other ones we've seen in the past. However, Vegeta makes short work of Pui Pui and kills him right after. So moving on to the next level, it's Yakon who shows up. He's an alien who's being manipulated by Babidi, and Goku jumps into the fray to fight. They get teleported to Yakon's planet, where it's pitch black and he has the advantage. Then the battle begins, and this is actually one of the tougher ones, because Yakon has even more annoying energy absorption abilities than any other enemy thus far. He will pretty much heal all the way through with just one blast, even if he's on his last bar, which is ridiculous. Eventually, we manage to beat him, and then we move on to the next floor. And so, on the next floor, Deborah comes out as Babidi cannot afford to send anyone he's not sure is strong enough to beat any of them. So Deborah comes out and challenges everyone at the same time, but Gohan jumps in as it is his turn to fight after all. They're teleported to Deborah's world, where he has the advantage, and then the battle begins. This battle is also a little bit difficult, I would say, because Gohan is underleveled here, which means that I had to be a lot more careful when handling Deborah, but he's really not much of a challenge otherwise, since his attacks are easy to dodge. After the fight ends, Deborah decides to withdraw, since he no longer needs to fight anyone there at all. And then realizing that among the Z fighters, there's someone that still holds a lot of evil within them, they decide that they need a new warrior to fight for them instead of the Z fighters. So Babidi uses his magic on Vegeta to take control of him, and after some resistance, he eventually gives in, since he also got a power boost from this control. Everyone is shocked that Vegeta has become this evil being once more, and then they get teleported back to the tournament, since Babidi believes that to be the ideal place for him to fight everyone. Now, Vegeta, however, immediately challenges Goku to a battle, and while those around him just try to brush off his desire to fight Goku as a petty need for revenge or to settle the score, they utterly misunderstand why this battle meant so much to Vegeta. He admits that he let himself get possessed because it was the only way that Goku would fight Vegeta. He mentions that this pride of his has been broken time and time again, as a low-class Saiyan has saved his life many times and continued to surpass Vegeta every time he took a step forward. He was never good enough to fulfill what he believed was his birthright of being the strongest of all Saiyans. He then mentions that he needs to fight Goku and doesn't care about anybody else there. Vegeta also kills a bunch of people to push Goku even further into fighting him. Goku transforms into Super Saiyan and prepares to confront Majin Vegeta, and their rivalry has been revived in its fullest glory. This is one of my favorite moments in all of Dragon Ball, of course, so I'm very happy seeing this get recreated for the game. Goku asks Babidi to teleport them somewhere where there aren't any civilians so that there aren't any casualties. They then get teleported onto the desert, and this is when Goku states that he has to take care of this fight quickly, since every time anyone expends any amount of energy, that energy goes directly to Majin Buu. So he transforms into a Super Saiyan 2. But Vegeta isn't impressed and also transforms into a Super Saiyan 2, where now we have a battle of two equals. However, when it came to the actual battle itself, I was pretty disappointed by this battle because it felt like just a regular battle rather than the boss fight that it should have been. It's an easy battle and it isn't quite as rewarding as it should have been right off the bat. We then skip over to Gohan and the Supreme Kai, who are forced to witness Majin Buu awaken since he's been absorbing a lot of energy from Goku's and Vegeta's battle, which eventually became enough for him to crack from his shell. A lot of pink clouds begin to emerge, and shortly after they morph into Majin Buu. And this is when things begin to get serious, because Majin Buu is one of the strongest guys around, and he kills Deborah to prove that point. He may look very jolly, but it's that jolliness that makes him so terrifying since he's even less predictable. Then Gohan fights Majin Buu, and this isn't a very difficult fight whatsoever, since Buu just kind of lets me do whatever I want to him. But eventually he decides to take action, and he hits pretty hard. However, the fight eventually ends and Buu just sends Gohan flying with one blast, but the Supreme Kai gets rid of the blast before it actually kills Gohan. But the Kai is next, with Buu dispatching him pretty easily. But he's still alive. Now for this part, I have a big problem because having this section be narrated instead of just animated takes away from its significance. So essentially, Goku and Vegeta keep fighting, but Goku tells Vegeta to stop because he can sense a very powerful energy not too far away. And then Vegeta realizes that this is Majin Buu as well, and when Goku asks Vegeta to fight alongside him to defeat him, Vegeta agrees but then knocks Goku unconscious. And this whole thing, Vegeta realizes that Majin Buu was truly revived, and it was all because he wanted to fight Goku at any cost, which meant that their energy kept getting absorbed by Buu's shell. He wants to take responsibility for what happened on his own and tells Goku that they will fight again if he makes it back, though Goku is unconscious, so he doesn't hear this. So we switch perspectives over to Vegeta and fly over to where Buu is. Vegeta sees him and obviously starts insulting him because, why not? And then the battle begins. This is a pretty fun fight, mostly because I really love Majin Vegeta's character, and it's just really cool to play as him. However, there are some abilities that he used when he obtained his Majin boost, such as the Final Impact and more, but we never get to use those at all, which is honestly a pretty big shame. So the fight ends and Vegeta realizes that there's only one way of getting rid of Majin Buu, and that is by making the ultimate sacrifice. He wasn't joking when he said he needed to take responsibility for his revival. Trunks and Goten show up to help Vegeta, but instead of helping him battle, Vegeta tells Trunks that he's never actually hugged him since he was born and asks if he could do it just one more time. Saying his goodbyes, he knocks Trunks out so that he doesn't try to interfere with his plan after returning back to normal since Deborah was killed. He and Krillin were no longer statues, and Vegeta asks Piccolo to take the kids away with him, and even asks that if he dies, if he somehow will end up in heaven just like Goku. And Piccolo tells him that he's killed too many innocent people, so he will not be spared from hell. Acknowledging this, Vegeta begins to charge up his energy and gives this one final blast everything he's got. He explodes to try and take Majin Buu with him, but unfortunately it doesn't work. He does die, but Buu regenerates immediately after and heals Babidi, who was almost killed by Piccolo just earlier. Then they both fly off in search of those who try to interfere with. Goku then wakes up from being knocked out and realizes that, he's alone, not being able to sense Vegeta's power or even Gohan's for that matter. Truth is that the Supreme Kai and Kibito found Gohan and just decided to take him back to their world where he can heal and train to defeat Majin Buu. Kibito had been brought back because Bulma had wished for those who were killed recently who aren't evil to be brought back to life. They then take Gohan with them. Goku arrives at the lookout to find everyone there. He tells them of the dire situation and that both Vegeta and Gohan died in the battle against Majin Buu. And while everyone is clearly distraught about what happened, Goku tells them that there is still hope of saving the Earth by teaching Trunks and Goten the fusion technique. However, while this is happening, the entire planet receives a warning call from Babidi, stating that they're looking for Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks to kill them, and if they can't find them, then they will start destroying cities and killing the innocent. Even mentioning that he believes Trunks lives in Capsule Corp and then makes his way over there. Trunks is afraid of what will happen to his grandparents and his home, and not to mention that the Dragon Radar will disappear, making it very difficult to find the Dragon Balls again if they need to. So Goku knows that he needs to stall Buu from getting there before Trunks can retrieve the radar. So he sends Trunks off to find it, and he warps over to where Buu and Babidi currently are. This next part is another fan favorite for a lot of reasons, and in this game, it is somewhat butchered, and I am trying to put that lightly. Goku uses instant transmission to spot Buu and Babidi to then warp to their location. Once he gets there, he tries to reason with both of them, but it obviously doesn't work. This is when Buu is just about to get violent, so Goku feels the need to transform into a Super Saiyan. Buu seems interested in Goku's transformation, so that's when Goku gives everyone a lesson on how to count. Just kidding. It's about the different Super Saiyan stages. He currently is in his first Super Saiyan form, as he explains to Buu, and then proceeds to transform to his Super Saiyan 2 form, but Babidi acknowledges that in terms of appearance, they are hardly any different at all, and in Goku's and Vegeta's case, that is mostly true. And then this is when Goku tells them that he can go even beyond that level, which is when I was expecting to see a spectacle that we saw, at least the same spectacle that we saw in the anime, but instead it was severely shortened to Goku just exploding in light, and all of a sudden he has long hair and no eyebrows. This is Super Saiyan 3, but in spite of this transformation taking just 5 seconds in the game, Goku still apologizes for taking too long to do so. In the anime, it took him a few actual minutes to transform, and I wasn't expecting that length per se, but I was expecting them to show how straining it was for Goku to reach that transformation. To many, this moment felt like it came out of nowhere. The anime too, but this was even more strange in the game since there is little to no build-up, even within its own scene, but even more strange in the game, but at least the fight is still fun since you get to play Super Saiyan 3 Goku without that massive energy drain that comes from using this transformation on the regular. As always, the fight isn't too challenging and it ends shortly after, but I bet you probably haven't noticed that we're already just about halfway through the saga. When the battle ends, Goku returns to his base form and tells Babidi and Buu that they will find an even stronger warrior to fight them in just 2 days. However, he threatens them not to kill any more civilians until then, and promptly warps away. Buu says that he wants to wait to fight this next warrior, but Babidi wants him to chase down Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks immediately, and that if he doesn't, he will seal Buu away. Again, just as his father once did. However, Buu isn't having any of that, and in this heavily censored scene, Buu gets mad and punches Babidi, then blasts him away, killing him. Buu is now following his own will, moving forward. Goku returns to the lookout and with Piccolo's help continues to help Goten and Trunks learn the fusion technique. But this time is cut short because with the more energy Goku expends, the less time he has left on Earth. So before the full 24 hours are done, Goku has to say goodbye to everyone once more, but at least he gets to do it properly this time. Some express how they will miss Goku, so he's no longer coming back to see them, and this will be the last time that they see each other at all. That's when we see little Goten shyly looking at Goku from behind Chi-Chi, and Goku finally hugs Goten for the first time and the last time. Goku then begins to fade away with fortune teller Baba, telling everyone that he looks forward to seeing them when they pass on too. However, Goten and Trunks have a lot of work to do, and in order to be able to defeat Buu, so they get back to training. In the meantime, Buu had already killed about 80% of the population, with a very few people remaining on Earth, and even used the remains of people he had turned into clay to build himself a home to come back to. This is when Mr. Satan is made in charge of defeating Majin Buu, the same way that he defeated Cell many years ago. At least that's what everyone thinks so far. So he does try to catch Buu off guard, but the opposite happens, so he tries to offer him chocolate and tells him that he's there to serve him. These chocolates were imbued with enough poison to kill an elephant, and rather than hurting Boo in any capacity, he actually ends up enjoying the taste quite a lot and starts to grow fond of Mr. Satan. This is when they begin to talk for a bit, and Mr. Satan asks why Boo feels the need to kill. And that's because Bobbity told him to, but he reminds him that he doesn't have to listen to him, and that he can just live peacefully if that's what he wants. He actually agrees to this because he trusts Mr. Satan at this point, and that's when the innocent side of Boo really starts to come out, and we get to see that he is directionless, and in fact has a lot to learn. Mr. Satan then pretty much declares victory in his head, since Boo won't be killing anyone else anymore, and he won't have to fight Boo either. But it couldn't stay peaceful for long as two bandits approach and try to kill Boo, but they end up missing and instead end up striking Mr. Satan, who is now on the brink of death. Boo is furious and can barely compose himself enough to heal Mr. Satan before he dies. But he releases so much of his anger that another evil Boo manifests and starts to attack the fat one. Fat Boo loses the fight and gets turned into chocolate, consequently being eaten, which makes this evil Boo transform into a totally different one. This is dumb Boo, but without an ounce of innocence and simply pure malice. The only ones he wouldn't hurt in this state are Mr. Satan and the little puppy that they picked up earlier. However, Boo decides that he's had enough waiting around, so he heads off to the lookout to confront Piccolo and the others, leaving Mr. Satan deserted. And then we get insight as to what's going on with Gohan, and he's been healed with a new wardrobe change, and he's now training to defeat Boo on the planet of the Kais. Gohan's first task is to try and remove the Z-Sword from the mountain, which is a weapon said to give the user a lot of power. So when Gohan finally pulls it out, he doesn't feel any different, but he begins to train with the sword nonetheless. On the other world, Goku realizes that there is another power level that he can actually sense in a very far off place, one that appears to be very familiar. He warps over to that energy, and he comes across Gohan and the Supreme Kai in the middle of their training. Goku is happy to see that Gohan is still alive, and decides to assist in their training. However, in the middle of their training, they break the Z-Sword and everyone starts freaking out since they think all of their hope is gone. But another entity emerges from the sword, and he's known as the Supreme Kai from many, many generations prior. He lectures everyone on how he was sealed inside of the Z-Sword many, many years ago, and that he can aid in Gohan's training by unlocking his true potential. However, this process will take many hours to complete, so they all have to sit tight and just wait until it is all done. Meanwhile, the boys are sleeping since they've been training for a while, but while they're gone, Boo shows up to the lookout and everyone is scared to death. Boo proceeds to demand that the warrior comes out to face him in combat, but their training isn't finished and they're, well, asleep. So Piccolo asks Boo to wait. However, he's not having it at all. It looks like he's rearing up to kill everyone there. Piccolo senses that that's exactly what will happen if they don't keep Boo at bay for at least a little bit longer. He resorts to the lowest of the low, and it's to tell Boo that he's got plenty of time to kill by killing the rest of humanity while he waits, though he intends on using the Dragon Balls to bring them back after the fact, but this is still pretty despicable. So Boo kills them all in an instant with one of the coolest attacks in the history of Dragon Ball. And just like that, humanity has been seized by Boo, and now they've run out of time. Krillin takes the boys into the hyperbolic time chamber to save time, since time passes much more slowly in there. They can make the most out of the very little time they have left. Piccolo takes Boo over to the time chamber in the meantime, and when they finally get there, the boys are ready to fuse. They do the fusion dance, and then they become Gotenks. The fusion is set to last only 30 minutes, which means that that's about how much time they have to defeat Majin Buu. And once the fusion runs out, they have to wait an entire hour before they're capable of fusing once more. And then they transform into a Super Saiyan and the battle begins. At this point, it looks like the two are evenly matched, and this battle is pretty sick since Gotenks has a very unique moveset, and it really does feel like playing with a completely different character. And once the battle is over, Gotenks starts to act like he's just not strong enough to beat Majin Buu, which actually prompts Piccolo to make a split-second decision and destroys the entrance to the time chamber so that neither can escape. In anger, Buu begins to scream and somehow ends up tearing a portal through space and taking this chance to leave through it. However, before Piccolo and Gotenks can catch up with him, the portal closes. Gotenks then decides to also transform into Super Saiyan 3, which he can now do, so that he can tear his own hole and escape through it. When he managed to return to our world, they noticed that the lookout is empty with only Buu remaining. While they were stuck trying to escape, Buu decided to eat everyone that was left there. This angers Gotenks in the most anticlimactic way possible and then proceeds to attack Buu, now engaging in a whole new battle as Super Saiyan 3 Trunks. This fight feels about the same, but you're dealing more damage. You still have the same moveset and the same playstyle, but it is still pretty fun to play as Gotenks nonetheless. Then once he finally defeated Buu, Gotenks prepares to deliver the final blow, but he runs out of energy and diffuses into Goten and Trunks. At this point, everyone is starting to feel hopeless as Majin Buu regenerates and is ready to kill them all as originally intended. While this is happening, Gohan finishes his power release ritual and is now ready to face Buu. Gohan will be leaving the land of the Kais very soon, which means that he also will not be able to see Goku until he dies. And Goku says that he wishes he could have seen Gohan growing up to be the man he is now. Gohan then promises him that he will give his fight against Buu his all and warps away with Kibito. Once they've reached Earth, Gohan asks Kibito if he can give him an outfit identical to Goku's, as he would love to be able to honor him when he fights. So he gets his wish and off he goes. Shortly after, he arrives at the battlefield and everyone is surprised to see that he is alive, and not only that, but that he has gained an immense amount of power. Gohan is informed that everyone else had been killed, but they all believed that since they haven't sensed Sunday's energy, that he likely died earlier, but he managed to escape, and Gohan takes notice of this. At this point, he has never been more confident that he can win this fight. So the fight begins, and we get access to his new transformation, which isn't unique to the Saiyans whatsoever, and it is actually a really cool one still. With this new strength, he annihilates Majin Buu in this fight, as it feels like a cakewalk in comparison to a lot of the other ones. And this is reflected in the fact that Buu feels helpless against Gohan. Buu resorts to only one thing, as he believes it's the only thing that he can do in order to win. He taunts the kids to fuse and promises to fight Gohan after he finishes his fight with Gotenks. So they fuse and then transform into Super Saiyan 3, which is exactly when Buu used his opportunity to absorb both Gotenks and Piccolo, hence having their strength added to his own. But Gohan does not stand a chance here, and this is certainly a considerably more difficult battle, as the majority of the fight, for me, usually consists of having to dodge that stupid galactic donut that keeps you stunned for a while, for a little bit too long. But after that fight is over, Gohan's efforts appear to be in vain. However, there's still hope, as the Old Supreme Kai wants to send Goku to Earth to help Gohan fight Majin Buu, but he's not allowed to step foot in the world of the living anymore, considering that he's dead. So the Old Supreme Kai kills himself to offer his life to Goku, hence reviving him. Right then and there, this is pretty ridiculous, but it was put there as a convenient gag, I suppose. The Elder Supreme Kai then tries to show Goku a different and more efficient fusion technique than the one he taught Goten and Trunks, and that's through the Potara earrings. Kibito and the Supreme Kai give the fusion technique a try by each wearing one of their earrings on opposite rings, and then they fuse, becoming much more powerful. However, he's told that he is still not powerful enough to face Buu, which speaks volumes about how weak those two were in their own. So Goku is given 2 earrings so that he can try it for himself with Gohan, but is warned that while this transformation, or this fusion I should say, is much more powerful than the regular fusion dance, it is also permanent. With that in mind, Goku warps away to Earth, and before Buu can attack Gohan, he kicks him and throws the earring at Gohan before he can even begin to digest what the hell is going on. But he drops it. And in the midst of all this taking place, Gohan finds the earring, but Boo manages to absorb even Gohan before he can even put on the earring and drops it. Goku picks up the earring, and now it's just him that's left to face Boo. Completely invincible in comparison. Completely outmatched as he's got Gohan's power up added to his own power, which makes him virtually invincible in comparison. Goku senses another energy roaming around, and he believes he recognizes this one, so before giving it much thought, he warps away. When he reappears, he finds himself in front of Vegeta, who was also given 24 hours on Earth in order to help defeat Majin Buu. Goku is very happy to see Vegeta and tells him that they need to fuse in order to beat Buu, but Vegeta refuses to fuse with Goku. Goku believes that it's just because of his pride, but while it is true, it's also because Vegeta saw Goku transform into Super Saiyan 3, a transformation he had access to the entire time. And he didn't use it against Vegeta when they fought. Goku was holding back, which made Vegeta feel more humiliated than ever. So he's really mad and, well, being really petty, but Goku brings up the fact that Buu ate everyone. Trunks, Bulma, Goten, Gohan, everyone. In order to save them, the only way that they can be strong enough to win is by fusing, so that's what convinces Vegeta to take the Potara and put it on. Then in classic Goku fashion, he tells Vegeta last minute that once they fuse it will be permanent, so they end up fusing, releasing this massive flurry of colors, and we see Vegito, the ultimate fusion. He immediately transforms into a Super Saiyan and charges directly at Majin Buu. And this fight is one of the coolest ones in this game, without a doubt, because it's the only time that you get to play as Vegito. You get an almost completely new moveset, which is really cool, and his combos are really cool too. We barely get to know Vegito as a character at all, but we get to play as him, which is a sacrifice I'm willing to make in the interest of time. After the fight finally concludes, we get to see a cutscene where Vegito is just casually beating the hell out of Majin to such a speed and degree that would only be possible to display with the technology back in 2020 when this game released. It was truly astounding to watch back then and still astounding to watch right now. After the cutscene ends, Vegito gives Buu a countdown of 10 where once it's done, Vegito will kill Buu. And Buu decides that the only way to stop Vegito is the same way he's been eliminating any threat that's stronger than him, through absorption. This is just as Vegito wanted, however, since he wanted to get absorbed to try and rescue anyone else that Buu had absorbed up to this point. And Vegito gets absorbed, and Buu believes that no one can now stand in his way. However, a lot happened inside of Buu that wasn't shown here, which is honestly very unfortunate and missed opportunity, but here's kind of what happened. So Goku and Vegeta end up splitting up from their permanent fusion inside of Buu and manage to take everyone that Buu absorbed from out of his body. They successfully escaped, and Buu begins to lose all of his forms up to this point, but he is still growing more powerful, somehow. And well, shortly after, he returns to his true original form, one of pure evil. This is who we know as Kid Buu. His first instinct is to destroy the planet, so he opens with this giant death ball, tosses it, no hesitation whatsoever. In the middle of Goku and Vegeta trying to escape, they could only rescue so many people before the planet was destroyed. So they grabbed Dende, Mr. Satan, and the puppy, but ultimately Piccolo, Gohan, Trunks, and Goten were killed in the explosion. But the Supreme Kai arrived on time to take Goku, Vegeta, and those they held back to the planet of the Kais. And now they've got very little time left and a ton of regret, since those they actually loved were killed by Buu in that explosion. They realize that they have very little time left before Buu shows up to kill them, so they have to plan ahead. They need to gather the Dragon Balls on Namek again to try and rectify everything that has happened so far. Buu then appears, and that's when Goku and Vegeta prepare to fight Buu. However, this time they don't want to fight Buu with fusion, since Goku thinks he can take him on by himself. Hence, Goku takes charge. The Supreme Kai and the rest flee to Namek, but forget to take Mr. Satan and the puppy along with them. Now the final battle begins between Goku and Majin Buu. He goes straight into Super Saiyan 3 and the battle begins. This fight is certainly pretty tough because Buu is really fast and has a dumb moveset that lets him break your guard too easily, but he's very manageable even if you're a couple of levels below him, since you're not losing energy from using Super Saiyan 3 at the very least. At least not right now, I should say. You have to do a lot of dodging around, and he is a little bit tanky, but after you take him down, we cut to a cutscene where they're still fighting and appear to be evenly matched. Vegeta is watching in admiration for what Goku has achieved, acknowledging that Goku keeps getting stronger than him, not because he has people that he cares about and wants to protect, but because he always tries to surpass his own limits, no matter how far he's already gotten. This is something he has always been blind to, and watching Goku fight so hard to beat Majin Buu gave him that realization, and that's when, for the first time, Vegeta admits that Goku is number one. Though Vegeta says this with pride rather than with anguish, which was always a very nice scene and almost a proper conclusion to Vegeta's character, up to this point that is. Goku is losing energy quickly and says that he's confident that he can beat Buu if he could charge up his energy for just 1 minute. So Vegeta decides to jump in and face off against Buu to buy Goku that minute. Goku warns Vegeta that since he's already dead, if he experienced death in his current state, then he would cease to exist, and Vegeta tells him to just mind his own business. In typical fashion, he transforms into Super Saiyan 2 and rushes at Buu, beginning the battle. This fight is actually easier, since I will always say this, but Vegeta's Big Bang attack is overpowered. It has a massive range, doesn't consume that much energy, and deals a good amount of damage, so this fight was certainly easier than what it was with Goku because of this one move, but it's always satisfying to use this attack nonetheless. Vegeta is now heavily wounded by Buu, and Goku reverts back to his base form since during that minute he couldn't sustain his energy any longer. So Vegeta has another idea. He believes that Goku can take down Buu with the Spirit Bomb, and that's when Vegeta contacts Dende to tell him that he knows what the first two wishes should be. First, he wants Porunga to restore planet Earth, and then to revive everyone who isn't evil that died after Babidi arrived on Earth. And Vegeta still believes he isn't worth the title of being good, but after both wishes were granted, Vegeta was also revived, which meant that even after everything Vegeta has done, he's repented to the point of now being free of evil. Gohan and the others return as well. So Goku begins to prepare the Spirit Bomb and asks everyone for their energy. Only those who recognize Goku give him energy, and he can feel everyone's spirit being poured right into it. But it's not powerful enough. So Vegeta steps in along with King Kai's help to contact everyone on Earth to ask for their energy. He does it very aggressively though, as you might expect. So only those who recognize Vegeta's voice offer their hands, which are very, very few people. But no one else is listening to Vegeta here, which frustrates him, and that's when Mr. Satan steps in to offer his help. However, Buu is still trying to kill Goku, so Vegeta has to step in again for another battle, and this time it's still a little easier than Goku's fight, but ultimately still a challenge. He gets beat up again, but while Goku is charging the Spirit Bomb, Kid Buu spits out Fat Buu, and he eventually wakes up to face Kid Buu himself, free of all evil within, and he does it to protect Mr. Satan. He then asks everyone on Earth to raise their hands and offer their energies, and since they all recognize Mr. Satan, they do exactly that, and the Spirit Bomb is finally fully formed. But Buu isn't going to let Goku finish up quite yet, and this is when Goku has to step in himself to fight Majin Buu just one more time in an epic showdown, where the theme song plays and only inspires the player to perform even better in this next fight. You start off in your base form, but you can still use your transformations to your heart's content. Shortly after this pretty awesome battle, Goku calls Mr. Satan a real hero, and then launches the Spirit Bomb at Kid Buu, which he is still able to push back because of Goku not being able to push back with his own strength. So they use the third and final wish to restore Goku's energy to 100%, and immediately Goku pushes back with a lot more force that makes it very difficult for Kid Buu to be able to fight back at all. He then transforms into a Super Saiyan to deliver the final blow, and with everyone's support, Goku gives his final words to Buu, saying that he wishes for Buu to be reborn in the future as a good guy, so that they can fight again, before finishing him off with the strongest Spirit Bomb combo he's ever delivered on. Buu is finally destroyed once and for all. After this happens, everyone sighs in relief, and Goku gives Vegeta a thumbs up and gets it right back. A friendship has finally formed between the two. Shortly after, Vegeta spots Fat Boo and says that he needs to die before he causes havoc, but Mr. Satan stands in the way since he believes that this Boo just needs someone to guide him and take care of him, begging him not to kill this Boo. Goku tells Vegeta that it's fine to let him live, as he won't cause any more harm. So finally, they all warp back to the lookout in celebrations. Chi-Chi, in tears, asks Goku if they can finally be a normal family and live together, and he confirms that he won't leave their side anymore. The planet is saved, the people of Earth are saved, and evil has been exterminated. This marks the end of the Dragon Ball Z storyline, where every Z fighter gets to live peacefully on Earth, with Goku finally back from this constant cycle of training and dying to stay with his family. This is the happy ending they've all been yearning for. So this marks the end of the Dragon Ball Z storyline, which was about 25 hours long, when skipping a lot of the side content and quests, mostly focusing on the story itself. This was a journey, and this game was a beautiful way of experiencing the Dragon Ball Z story once more for fans of the series. However, this video essay is not over yet, as we still have a lot to go over. I wanted to quickly touch on some of the issues from the storyline, but most of my issues really came from the missing content. Things such as the Saiyan saga feeling a little bit rushed, in spite of it being the first saga of the game, and us getting a ton of level up boosts throughout the story was pretty annoying, since it meant less time with the characters and grinding and just, well, more time just wanting to get through the story, which isn't really the experience I was hoping for. Doing random encounters also offered too little in the way of offering actual experience and was pointless, to the point where it got really annoying every time I was forced into a battle with any random enemies. I absolutely hated having to fight anything that wasn't intentional after a while, since, in my opinion, you get nothing out of fighting random enemies besides Z-Orbs, which you can obtain by fighting villainous enemies and exploring the map anyway. I was also really hoping that they would patch in the fight between Trunks and Cell, or even the final Flash scene that Vegeta used against Cell, but that was cut content, or just content that they decided wasn't worth adding or didn't have the time to add. This is kind of rich considering that they must have had the time, since the DLC is far from a priority for Bandai, as they hardly ever keep us updated on anything regarding the DLC, even when people are constantly begging for some information. Anything while we wait. I literally mean anything. But we just get V-Jump scans that other great YouTubers such as HEXGAMING have to report on in order for us to get any information. We don't even get trailers until we're super close to the release date, which always feels very random. It's not fair to the community to stay in the dark for so long, and it certainly isn't fair that those who already paid for the season pass, which we will be talking about more soon, already have their money taken, and we're just banking on Bandai to actually deliver on their promises when they're so difficult to communicate with in the first place. This is frustrating in so many levels, and it's not that I'm impatient, it's just that it feels like Bandai just ignores us for weeks and months on end without saying anything. This is also kind of like PTSD, since another publisher and developer, Square Enix, crushed my dreams on a complete Final Fantasy XV game after axing Season Pass 2 when Tabata quit Square Enix to work on his own games elsewhere. This was after many people had already paid for promised content that was never delivered. But at least we got this beautiful hardcover book that looks beautiful on my shelf. I might do a full-on recorded reading of this in the future, but we will see. Also, the PC version seems to have issues with texture popping whenever you enter a new area during a cutscene, which is always just so jarring to see. This needs a patch. Either way, I've done enough ranting on this subject, but I wanted to bring this up now before we got to the DLC section, as why we're going to be talking about the content itself in that segment. But before that, now let's just go ahead and talk about the post-game, and there's actually quite a bit that you can do in the post-game, and this is one of the great things about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, to be honest. You get to do a ton of side quests, which are definitely fun, and you also get a bunch of events that you can participate in. You get to play as all 5 playable characters, including future Trunks, which is pretty cool. But most importantly, we have a lot of level grinding to do since the level cap of 250. One of the easiest ways of getting there is by completing the Soul Emblem chart for the training chart and maxing it out so that you can get 100% battle experience added on, so basically doubling the amount of experience that you get after every fight, and fighting Banyu, the new member of the Ginyu Force, until your characters reach 250, which is a lot, but this is assuming that you didn't get the DLC, and we will talk about that soon. You can also collect the Dragon Balls in order to wish for riches, rare items, Z-orbs, and to fight a bunch of different enemies from the past in the form of side quests. These are pretty fun ways of leveling up and collecting even more soul emblems to add into the different parts as well. And you can also become as powerful as you want by collecting ingredients and increasing your stats permanently through eating full course meals as much as you want, as long as you're willing to put the work into it, which also means that level 250 is far from the limit that your characters can achieve. On the PS4 version of this game, where I've actually clocked in over 300 hours, my characters are way more powerful than the ones on the PC version for me, since I haven't put in that much work in that version. Also, you can go ahead and take this time to train for the rest of the abilities and complete as much of the skill tree as possible. And there's also another where you get to fight villainous enemies, which eventually start to resemble puppet-like versions of enemies you fought in the past. And after defeating all of these, you get to fight a character from Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2 known as Mira, who is pretty powerful. And after a recent patch, you can actually repeat this process as much as you want. Now, when it comes to side content in this game, there's just a lot, and I really enjoy doing all of it, but the tediousness of collecting ingredients really gets to you, which is why I wish that there was some kind of a way to train to actually improve your stats instead of being forced to use those meals, or at the very least being able to supplement your training with those meals. That would be pretty nice, like when it comes to increasing your stats, since we won't be getting too many level cap increases, and this one might actually be the last one even. You can even use the time machine in order to travel back in time to another saga, or there were just unfinished side quests, or maybe you want a higher rank in a battle, which is really cool. So you can just go ahead like with the completionist route if you really want to. When it comes to post-game content, there's just a lot to do for sure, and I had a lot of fun going through all of this. Eventually, things dried out for me around the time that the game released, but that changed with the introduction of the Season Pass. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And so, in order for you to play any parts of the Season Pass, you have to pay for the entire thing, which is an additional $25. This is pretty frustrating considering how long it took between releases, and this felt like a blatant way of taking your money since you can't possibly know the full value of the DLC packs until you see reviews or you get to see what they actually offer. Something that really became an issue for me later down the line, and I'll explain why soon. The first 2 chapters of the DLC are pretty short, but pretty fun in their own right, so let's get into the story behind DLC 1, and then we'll move on to DLC 2. You have to start this story off by going into the DLC menu in the pause menu and manually selecting this DLC, and then you get teleported over to a whole new world with Vegeta, and this is where you meet Whis, who is an angel that called upon the two of them in order to be able to gain the strength needed in order for them to face Beerus, the god of destruction. But this is more so for entertainment, since Whis is actually Beerus' own assistant. And to put it simply, he is incredibly powerful, and Vegeta recognizes Beerus too, as he's heard his name before. The goal is for Whis to train them and attain a whole new transformation befitting of the gods. So you get to participate in limit break training with both characters separately, and this allows you to unlock different transformations along the way. You see, you can play this DLC at any moment, even though it takes place after the Buu Saga technically, which is why they give you Kaioken, Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3 during these training sessions for Goku and for Vegeta. There's really just going to be Super Saiyan 1 and 2 for him. You do get a sparring match with Beerus, but that's at around level 5, so it's a simple 2-hit win there. However, as you progress through these training sessions, you get these sacred water items that get a lot more powerful later on, that are literally experience boosters, and after just a bit of grinding for these in training, you can reach level 250 in no time. But at around level 100, you can access the Super Saiyan God transformation and immediately put it to use against Beerus at level 100. So if you face him around that level, this will be a challenging fight, especially if you stick to energy attacks for the most part, since he seems to resist those pretty well. So stick to physical attacks for the best results in battle here, since your new combo attacks land a lot of hits at once, which makes breaking their guard easier and stunning them happen more often. And on Goku's case, he rushes over to punch Beerus, and then from below, he charges a Kamehameha and launches it at Beerus while struggling to hold it back. Goku overpowers him and wins the battle ultimately. And in Vegeta's case, he also punches Beerus, and then he looks down at him from way above and charges his God Heat Blast, I think it's what it's called, and then launches it. It takes Beerus down, but he doesn't stop there and continues to push his power even further to really hammer down. Both interpretations are very personalized to each character and are a treat to witness. After this, you get to continue training, and you'd be using the Sacred Water items in order to level up to level 250. You then get to participate in a side quest where you fight Vegeta and Super Saiyan God, and this was a very fun fight for sure, and one that is very much appreciated and satisfying to see happen. It's a tougher match for myself here because I was at a much lower level than Vegeta here, but it wasn't so bad. I mean, you both have to fight Beerus since he's in the mood to fight again, and this fight is more difficult for sure, since Vegeta goes back to being whatever level he was before this, which in my case was around 114. So now it is a tougher fight that is still pretty fun, and once it's all over, Goku and Vegeta return to their original forms since they've exhausted too much energy and Beerus leaves disappointed. At this point, you can challenge Beerus to level 250 at any time you want, and it will be a difficult fight, but it's going to be pretty satisfying to win every time. Though he does become pretty predictable over time, especially if you do this fight a lot. And after this, that's pretty much it for part 1 of the DLC. It's just a couple of short boss fights with an easy way to grind to level 250. It's short, sweet, but if you've already reached 250 before this point like I did on my first playthrough, you will be left feeling pretty empty and without much to do after the fact. But this was the first part. So let's go into a more exciting DLC, that being DLC part 2. So the second episode of the DLC takes place during the Resurrection F movie, and we start with Goku and Vegeta training with Whis, now using different outfits. Whis tells Vegeta that he would be a better fighter if he stopped thinking too much during a battle, and Goku would also be a better fighter if he stopped letting his guard down and getting too comfortable so much. Whis informs them that there is a new level of power that they can reach beyond that of just a Super Saiyan God, and they're both immediately interested. They both separately train with Whis, going through 2 different training matches against Whis, which allows what's coming next to feel a lot more earned, so I do appreciate having this training period. After both complete their training, Whis teaches them how to unlock their new power, and then they transform yet again. This is Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan, so essentially it's as if a Super Saiyan God was your base form, and you transformed into a Super Saiyan while in your God form. That's what this is, and it means that their hair turns blue to illustrate that change. From here, their training continues so that they can master this form, as it takes up a lot of energy. So far, so good. And then we move over to the events going on Earth, and we find that Gohan and Piccolo have been training together, but they both stop because they notice a massive energy approaching, one that is too familiar to all of them. They gather the rest of the Z fighters, and then you get to form 2 separate teams with Gohan and Piccolo leading those teams. And this is when we get introduced to this new mode, the Horde Battles, which is one of the coolest things to come with this DLC. Horde Battles are battles where you fight upwards of 100 enemies at a time, and it really makes you feel extra powerful when you're engaging in these. It's truly really cool, and to this day I have not gotten tired of it whatsoever. So we fight a bunch of Frieza's goons and Piccolo's team first, and manage to succeed. And then we switch over to Gohan and his team, and our experience is fairly similar, but the Ginyu Force shows up and, just jumps in to make things harder, and they're way more powerful now, without a doubt. However, these were still a ton of fun. I also really wanted to point out that for some reason, performance on PC with an RTX 3090 and a Ryzen 9 3950X Well, playing the CLC is somehow sluggish as hell, which is why the footage that you see looks the way that it does. I have no idea what was causing it, but apparently it was just that demanding, I guess. Anyway, the Z Fighters meet with Frieza after they're done dispatching of the hordes, and they all sense that Frieza is much more powerful than before. But not only that, he's hiding a great power as well. We then cut to Vegeta and Goku training, and we get to fight Whis in our Super Saiyan Blue transformation, and it is honestly pretty cool. We get access to new abilities as well, but we will be going over those just a little bit later. So once this is over, Bulma gives Whis a call and tells him that Frieza has invaded Earth and that the planet is in grave danger. Whis decides to cut their training short for now to send them to Earth and face Frieza. Once they arrive there, we see Frieza now in his final form, and everyone has taken a beating by him. But Frieza simply couldn't contain himself when he saw Goku and expressed how humiliating his defeat on Namek was, and that he's come back for revenge. They never address how he was revived here, but I'm assuming that they're just taking this from the fact that we revived him during the post-game content, but Vegeta seemed very surprised earlier when he heard that Frieza was still alive, so that's a little bit strange. I don't know, I guess just a bit of inconsistency there. Anyway, Goku's ready to take on Frieza in his base form without transforming, and that's when the battle begins. During it, Frieza asks why he won't transform into Super Saiyan, and it's because he doesn't need to at all. At least not yet. This fight is pretty awesome, and the soundtrack for the fights coming up, including this one, are absolutely fantastic. After this fight, Frieza reveals his strongest form since he wants to kill Goku with all of his might, so he displays his new transformation where he's now Golden Frieza. Goku seems a little bit nervous about this new power-up, but that's when Vegeta steps in and decides to fight Frieza himself. He transforms into Super Saiyan Blue, and the battle begins. This fight was very interesting because Frieza just loves spamming a ton of attacks, which means that you'll be doing a lot of dodging around, but as always, the Big Bang attack saved me a lot of hassle along the way. The fight then ends and Frieza looks defeated. Vegeta prepares to land the final blow on Frieza, but before he can do that, Frieza manages to destroy the entire planet. So before it's all gone, Whis reacts quickly and takes Goku along with Beerus to outer space, where we watch the entire Earth be destroyed. Goku is filled with regret, saying that he should have killed Frieza, and when he had the chance, so Whis tells him that it is indeed true. He is to blame for what happened, as he was super occupied about having fun during this battle. However, Whis can rewind time for up to 3 minutes at the longest, but before doing so, Beerus tells Goku not to mess up this one opportunity that he's granting him. Goku takes it, and Whis rewinds time to right before Frieza destroys the planet. Goku jumps in to interrupt Frieza at the nick of time and then transforms into Super Saiyan Blue to take him down once and for all. This fight was awesome, though virtually identical to Vegeta's fight. A lot of dodging, a lot of blocking, a lot of charging up your ki, and a lot of using physical skills to get through Frieza. And then during this fight, a quick event happens when he begins to charge up a supernova. But if you manage to break Frieza's hold, his energy ball will fall apart and you can strike him once. Then press B once more to strike him again and finish him off with a super sweet cutscene. Goku absolutely brutalizes Frieza in this cutscene before charging an ultimate Kamehameha and launching it point blank at Frieza. As he's not able to keep up, he gets blown away with this beautiful cutscene now ending and the Earth saved. Everyone celebrates Goku's victory, and then we transition over to a reminder that Goku and Vegeta are still training to surpass their limits, and they surely will with time. When it comes to the story of DLC 2, that's really about it, but afterwards we do get super smooth performance back in the same area, which is weird since it was so sluggish earlier, though granted this only happens on PC. But now you can participate in horde battles with Goku and Vegeta and really practice those moves. They each learned 2 new moves to go along with their transformation. Goku had more favoritism here though, as the ultimate Kamehameha is basically a limit breaker Kamehameha that explodes into a big bang and blanks out the entire screen while having crazy range. And then Vegeta just gets the ultimate Galick Gun, but it requires more charge time for it to be useful, and from my experience, there's no way that your enemy is just going to let you do that. So this ability is kind of trash in this game. However, they each get a physical ability with different names, but they're the exact same ability essentially, where they vanish and start attacking a bunch of enemies all at once, which can also cover quite a bit of ground. You can also do a couple of side quests here and even fight Frieza at a much higher level again. But even better than that, you get to fight a stronger Beerus to level 300 since they raised the level cap for this DLC. This DLC chapter ended in a bang, I would say, and so far, this is everything that's playable out of the Season Pass. So now, there's only one piece left to complete the Season Pass, and I was so excited for what was to come. They had promised that this last portion of the Season Pass would be of the length of an entire saga, considering that it seemed like they had decided to move with Dragon Ball Super content. I thought that we were probably going to get the Goku Black saga, which would have given us access to the Super Saiyan Blue times Kaioken transformation. That would have been really cool. So we got an announcement that had to do with future Trunks, and it starts off with his origins. Something that was missing from the main game and something that would have helped a lot in getting us to use Trunks more and even just learn about him more. But it was absent. I thought to myself that if they are starting with this, then probably they're going to transition to what happened after Trunks returned to his future timeline and destroyed the androids, plus Cell in his future. Then maybe we can transition into the future Trunks that has a new threat glooming on him, and this world known as Goku Black. However, that doesn't at all appear to be the case whatsoever. We're getting future Trunks' timeline, but as far as we know, it is going to be contained within Z, and not expand into Super's storyline, as we have been so far. Bandai has also confirmed that this won't be happening whatsoever, so it's not just the trailers that are making us think otherwise. Here, they missed a perfect opportunity, and this really gives me the impression that they aren't planning on adding a second season pass, and the game might just die with this coming inclusion later this year. Needless to say, I'm already pretty pissed about this because it doesn't make any sense to return to the past now. Events that took place well before even the Buu saga. I don't like the idea at all, but I will be waiting for it to release so that I can play it, and then review it for you all as a standalone product, I suppose. But this is what I mean regarding the idea of making us purchase an entire season pass to play any of the DLC contents as they release. Not only are we left with long wait times, but also we don't know what's coming or what to expect until the last second because Bandai just doesn't say anything. And they especially won't care now that they have my money. They have no incentive to be communicative here, unfortunately, and we just have to deal with it, right? If it had been me, I would have only bought DLC 1 and 2, and probably skipped 3 considering the fact that I believe this should have either been one of the shorter episodes or just included in the base game already. I'm not that interested in time traveling to Trunks' timeline during the Android Massacre only, if it means that that's the major piece of content we're getting. With that said, I've laid out my thoughts, but I haven't played the DLC yet, so let's see if it blows my mind. At least I'm going in with low expectations. And that's been it. This is my very first video essay on a video game, or retrospective review, I suppose, and I will be working on many more coming soon. I wanted to do this game because I felt like this game didn't really get much attention, and I would say that its lack of attention contributed to the lack of Bandai giving a damn at times. While I speak as a very frustrated fan, I also speak as someone that really loved this game. I can totally recommend the game, but I would hold off on the Season Pass content, since the content isn't that mind-blowing so far, even if it is fun. It's overpriced right now, but let's see what the future Trunks DLC has to offer. With that said, I hope you all liked this video, and if you did, then please make sure to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to hear your input and just your thoughts on what could improve on future essays and things like that. Also, I do have my main channel, Tech Summit, which is where I review a ton of different tech, so links to that down below. The next game I plan on covering is Final Fantasy XV, the Royal Edition, and let's see where we go from there. With that said, this has been Francisco, and I will be seeing you all next time with either another Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster Box opening or just a regular vlog until that next essay is done. So, until next time, enjoy.